My martial arts didn't just practice on their own. They were capable of sudden epiphanies. After a long night of hard work, my skills were full of energy. Their progress climbed steadily. The Gale Steps technique refused to be left behind, and with a sudden flash of inspiration, it broke through to the proficient realm. Meanwhile, the mighty bull's strength tempered my body all night without exhaustion. I woke up in my small, single apartment as the morning sun filtered in. The notification sounds in my head were constant, but I stayed calm. The initial panic had long since faded. I had improved again. I muttered the words to myself, feeling the surge of power flowing through my veins. My expression didn't change, but I lifted my hand and gave a slight push. A sudden gust of wind swirled through the room, making the ceiling lamp sway violently. I looked on with indifferent eyes. It wasn't that I was trying to act cool. It was just that this level of strength wasn't enough to be proud of yet. The world I had traveled to was strange. Beyond the advanced modern technology, there were countless martial arts. Through cultivation, humans could control supernatural powers. Even the elderly people sweeping the streets could probably lift a tripod. High-level warriors were even more terrifying, capable of splitting the moon, tearing the sky, or crossing galaxies like ancient gods. This was a high martial world where everyone practiced. You could see it in the college entrance exams. Cultural subjects only accounted for a small fraction of the score. The main focus was a student's combat power. The person I had taken over was a high school senior about to take those exams. I wasn't a complete failure. I had made it into a key high school, but I wasn't great either. If you ignored my grades, I was at the bottom of the barrel in terms of fighting strength. With my current power, I wasn't at the very bottom anymore, but I was only just touching the threshold of a martial arts university. I was still stuck in the stubborn bronze rank. However, a small smile played on my lips. With a thought, a semi-transparent fluorescent interface appeared before my eyes. My stats showed I was at Awakening level 4. My Mighty Bull strength was at the proficient level with 23% progress. Gale Steps was now proficient at 1%. My Lightning Flash Slash was still at the basic level with 20% progress. When I crossed over into this world, this system came with me. Any martial art I learned would practice itself. It was incredibly diligent, training 24 hours a day without stopping. It was a level of grind that would make a corporate CEO weep with joy. Most importantly, the speed was insane. For my predecessor to reach the proficient level in Gale Steps, it would have taken at least 2 or 3 months of bitter training. With the system, it took less than a week. It was 10 times faster. Unfortunately, my actual cultivation level was rising slowly. I couldn't even see the shadow of Awakening level 5 yet. I shook my head and thought about it. The Mighty Bull's strength used for tempering the body was different from other martial arts. As a breathing technique, the realm itself wasn't the problem, but the physical tempering was limited. Breathing techniques require 2 things: the elevation of the technique itself and the physical quality of the practitioner. They were closely related. The higher your realm, the higher the efficiency, but if the energy supply wasn't there, your physical stats wouldn't go up. The solution was simple: nutrition. I needed professional martial arts nutrients or beast meat. But those were expensive. I was an orphan, and my only income was a government allowance of 1,500 yuan a month. In a city like Qingshan, that was enough to survive, but it wasn't nearly enough to support martial arts training. As the saying goes, literature is for the poor, but martial arts is for the rich. I needed to find a way to make money. I got out of bed, my mind set. I wanted to get into a top-tier university. Since my system allowed me to master multiple techniques, I needed to go where the techniques were hidden. And the best place for that was a top university. After a quick breakfast, I walked out of my apartment complex. It was early March, and the morning air was crisp and cold. Frost clung to the budding green leaves along the road. I lived in the old district, and transportation was convenient. The bus was only 1 yuan, and even cheaper with a student discount. But I looked at my bank balance. Only 3 digits left. I chose the green option instead. I warmed up and started running toward school. On the way, I tested my speed. A full 100-meter sprint took me about 7 to 8 seconds. In my previous world, I would have been a super soldier. Half an hour later, I reached Qingshan First High School. I slowed to a walk, sweat dripping from my forehead, but my breathing remained perfectly steady. The mighty bull's strength was famous for its endurance. Near the school gates, I ran into my friend, Guorinyu. He was a chubby kid with a round face and a buzz cut. He was in my class, but his strength was so low that even the teacher told him not to waste energy on training because the exams weren't worth the effort. Guorinyu looked at me with confusion. He scratched his head and noted that lately, I hadn't been late, I hadn't skipped, and I was actually paying attention in class. I kept a straight face and smiled. I told him there were only 100 days left until the exams, and it was time to work hard. If I waited any longer, I wouldn't make it into Galaxy University. Galaxy University was the strongest school in the Human Federation. The number of martial arts they possessed was unimaginable. Guorinyu told me to stop dreaming during the day, saying if I worked hard, I might get into a normal school. I just laughed and changed the subject, asking why he was here so early. He got excited, mentioning that a shop owner named Old Lu had just received a batch of old goods, and he wanted to find a hidden treasure. Without waiting for my answer, he grabbed my wrist and dragged me toward the commercial area. He wanted to show me his skills, so I'd stop calling him a sucker. We wove through a few streets and entered an alleyway. At the end sat an antique shop called Many Treasures. It was small, with only a few shelves. Guorinyu shouted for the owner. A thin old man with a goatee walked out from behind a curtain, rotating 2 walnuts in one hand. He pointed to a shelf and said he had saved the new stock specifically for him. Guorinyu's eyes lit up. He pulled a magnifying glass from his pocket and started inspecting the items with total focus. I just stood there, suppressed a laugh. I knew exactly what kind of shop this was. These places near schools existed just to scam students who dreamed of finding a $1 million relic. In my memory, the most valuable thing Guorinyu ever found was worth 500 yuan, and he had paid 1,000 for it. He was a business genius in reverse. I picked up a clay pot from the counter just to look. Old Lu saw me and walked over with a brilliant smile. He claimed the pot was a relic from before the Federal era, over 3,000 years old, used by an ancient emperor. He offered it to me for a bargain price of 3,000 yuan. I twitched my lip. I could clearly see a line of small text printed on the inside wall of the pot. Produced by Qingshan People's Pottery Factory, March 5, 1099. Suggested retail price, 1.5 yuan. The thing had literally come off the assembly line yesterday. I pointed at the tiny text on the bottom of the pot. Old man, I said, unable to hide my frustration. I'm pretty sure the oldest thing in this shop is you. How dare you? Old Lu snapped. I'm not a thing. He caught himself, realizing his own words sounded like he was calling himself trash. He glared at me, grumbled under his breath, and went back to ignoring me. I didn't care. I was staring at a translucent screen only I could see. Thunderbolt / Basic progress 20%. I narrowed my eyes. Out of the 3 martial arts I was practicing, Thunderbolt / was the slowest. Even with my body training itself automatically, it only gained about 4% progress a day. It wasn't that the skill was lazy. It was just high tier. The federal government ranked martial arts into 6 grades: E, D, C, B, A, and S. Each grade was a massive leap in power, but the difficulty spiked just as fast. Thunderbolt / was a B-rank skill. It was far more complex than my D-rank bull strength or my basic movement techniques. Still, because my skills practiced themselves 24/7, difficulty didn't scare me. Even at this slow pace, I'd hit the proficient realm by the end of the month. My heart sped up just thinking about it. Martial arts mastery also had 6 levels: basic, proficient, expert, subtle, master, and perfect. Once I hit proficient, my combat power would skyrocket. I'd finally be a middle-of-the-pack student at Qingshan High instead of a bottom-tier loser. I swear on my life, this blade belonged to a god general. Old Lu's voice boomed from across the shop. He was holding a rusted, broken saber, slapping his chest with total conviction. Look at these lightning patterns. That's proof it was bathed in the blood of a thunder beast. I looked over. Thunder beasts were terrifying creatures known for their insane speed. They moved like living bolts of lightning. Thunderbolt / had actually been created by a legendary general specifically to hunt them down. It was a style built on being faster than the fastest. Give it a rest, Lu, Guorinyu said without even looking up. If your oaths actually worked, You would have dropped dead the last time you sold me that invincible shield that shattered when I dropped it. Old Lu gave a sheepish grin and put the broken saber back on the shelf. Kids these days are too hard to fool, he muttered. I walked over, curious. The saber was long and narrow, about 2 fingers wide, with a slight, elegant curve. The blade was a dull silver, etched with faint purple lines that looked like frozen lightning clouds. It was exactly my style. The only problem was the condition. It was covered in a web of cracks, and the edge was so notched it looked like a saw. It looked like it would struggle to cut a vegetable, let alone a monster. I reached out to pick it up. I didn't believe a word of old Lu's God General story. I just wanted to see how it felt in my hand. The moment my fingers wrapped around the hilt, I froze. A series of mechanical pings exploded in my brain like a rapid-fire machine gun. Thunderbolt Slash has detected a profound lightning intent. Entering enlightenment state. Training speed surging. Progress plus 35%, plus 35%, plus 30%, plus 30%. Accumulation complete. Insight depth achieved. Thunderbolt Slash has leveled up. A flood of information slammed into my mind. It wasn't like a game where you just click a button. This was divine empowerment. It was as if decades of combat experience, muscle memory, and secret techniques were being branded into the deepest parts of my brain. Usually, this process was a slow trickle. But in this enlightenment state, it was a data tsunami. My vision blurred. Progress plus 25%, plus 25%. Insight deepening. Achieving secondary leap. Thunderbolt Slash has reached the expert realm. Progress plus 20%. The voices finally stopped. I stood there, breathless, and immediately summoned my status panel. Thunderbolt Slash. Expert. Progress 92%. I swallowed hard. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was insane. It hadn't just reached proficient. It had skipped an entire level and landed deep into the expert realm. I was a hair's breadth away from the subtle stage. For a normal person to reach this level with a B-rank martial art, they would need 20 years of bitter, daily practice. I had just gained half a lifetime of skill in 10 seconds. With an expert-level Thunderbolt Slash, I could fight people way above my level. I wouldn't just be able to hold my own against the awakening 6th-stage students at school. I could probably beat most of them. In Qingshan High, being able to fight above your rank was the mark of a true genius, a dragon among men. And I had just joined their ranks. But I wasn't done yet. If I could push this to this subtle realm, I'd be able to walk all over the elite students. The subtle realm was a massive watershed moment, a total qualitative change in power. Most people never reached it because it required raw talent and a deep understanding of the skill's essence, not just hard work. I took a few deep breaths to steady my shaking hands. I looked down at the broken saber again, staring until my eyes ached, but the enlightenment didn't trigger again. It seemed the lightning intent inside the blade had a limit. It could only push me this far. Still, old Lu had actually been telling the truth for once. This blade was something special. I had to have it. Old Lu, I said, casually swinging the broken piece of junk around like I didn't care. How much for this? Goran, you stopped what he was doing and stared at me. And you call me a sucker? My guy, your eyes must be broken. That's a piece of industrial scrap. I wouldn't take that if he paid me to carry it home. Fatty, you've been in this business for 5 minutes. You don't know anything. Old Lu barked at him. Then he turned to me with a predatory glint in his eyes. You have excellent taste. This is a divine weapon. It has slain countless thunder beasts. Since you're a student, I'll give you a deal. He held up a hand, splaying his fingers. 80,000 yuan. I raised an eyebrow. How about a discount? Let's just lop off the zeros and cut it in half. For 1,000. For 1,000. Old Lu wailed, looking like I'd stabbed him. That's less than what I paid for it. Fine, take it. Consider us friends. I shook my head. No, Old Lu. You misunderstood my math. What do you mean? He asked, confused. I didn't say 4,000, I said calmly. I said 4 yuan. Old Lu opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just stood there in stunned silence. In all his years of scamming people, he had never met someone whose idea of lopping off the zeros meant removing every single one of them. Goran, you lost it, bursting into a loud, mocking laugh. Hey Lou, you gonna take that deal? Looks like you finally met your match. For Yuan could barely buy a bowl of plain noodles in the school cafeteria. I knew it wasn't enough to actually buy the blade. I was just sending old Lou a signal. I wanted him to know I wasn't some clueless kid he could bleed dry. If you really want it, give me 2,000, old Lou sighed, sounding defeated. At least let me make enough for a bus ride home. 2,000? You just cut off 2 zeros. I scoffed. Kid, give me that knife before I lose my mind. Old Lou barked. Who bargains like this? It's insulting. Is it? I asked innocently. I'm just a student. Shouldn't you be supporting the future hope of the Federation? Honestly, you should probably give it to me for free. And if it's not too much trouble, maybe throw in some cash for my trouble. You want me to pay you to take my stock? He stared at me, dumbfounded. Cash would be best, I continued. I know seniors struggle with mobile payments, but I don't mind a transfer if it's easier for you. After a heated round of back and forth pulling and pushing, we finally settled on a price. I paid him 235 yuan. The free talk was just a tactic, of course. I pulled out my phone and sent the money quickly. Even a broken weapon with a deep martial intent was worth far more than a few $100. I had just scored a massive bargain. More importantly, I realized I had found a potential gold mine. I could use my martial arts epiphany state to verify antiques. It had limits. The item had to be used by a warrior, contain intent, and match a technique I knew. But it was a start. Even if I couldn't get rich, the instant mastery of techniques was worth it. I decided to test my theory. I spent the next few minutes touching everything in the shop. I even tried to grab the 2 walnuts old Lou was rolling in his palm. Unfortunately, nothing happened. Either the rest of the shop was industrial junk, or none of it matched my current skills. I needed to learn more techniques. Since my skills practiced themselves automatically, the more I had, the stronger I'd get. Lin Yuan, it's time, Guoren Yu said, checking his watch. The 100-day countdown ceremony for the college entrance exam starts this morning. We'll be dead if we're late. I nodded, gripped my rusty broken blade, and walked out with him. When we reached class 15 at Qingshan No. 1 High School, the room was buzzing. Since there were no morning lessons, everyone was gossiping. Most of the guys were stealing glances toward the podium. Standing there was Su Yun, our class teacher. She was 27, a top-tier university grad, and stunning. She wore a crisp white shirt and a tight pencil skirt that highlighted every curve. With her black-rimmed glasses, she looked both professional and incredibly elegant. She was the dream girl of every male student, though few dared to even speak to her. I wasn't intimidated. I tossed my broken blade onto my desk and walked straight up to her. Absolutely not, Su Yun said, her eyes widening as soon as I made my request. She planted her hands on her hips, her arched brows knitting together. A few days ago, you just started a B-rank technique, the Flash Thunder Slash. Now you want another one? I won't allow it. Quality over quantity, Lin Yuan. I looked her dead in the eye, putting on my most sincere face. I swear just this one. After this, I won't bother you again. She looked away, clearly flustered by my intense gaze. What rank are you looking at? B rank is fine, I said casually. B rank techniques cost hundreds of thousands on the open market, but they were free at school, provided your teacher approved. Su Yun let out a cold, mocking laugh. Just B rank? Why not A or S? Teacher Su, this is just a standard high school, I grinned. B rank is the best we've got. The guys in the classroom were burning with jealousy. If looks could kill, I'd be at the top of the school's hit list for flirting with their goddess. Su Yun sighed, her anger softening into concern. Higher rank means more power, but the difficulty increases exponentially. If you were a freshman, I wouldn't stop you. But the exams are in 100 days. Mastering 1 B rank is hard enough. 2 is impossible. The path of martial arts is about facing challenges, I said with a confident smile. I could afford to be bold. My techniques did all the hard work for me. Confidence isn't the same as arrogance, a voice sneered from the front row. It was Mahai, a guy with a face full of freckles. He didn't bother lowering his voice. 2 B-rank techniques in 100 days? What a clown. You're just desperate for attention. Guoren Yu jumped to my defense. Shut it, Mahai. At least Lin Yuan has the guts to try. Would you dare? It's pathetic, Mahai countered with a cold smirk. He's a nobody who might not even get into college. He's just doing this for vanity, so he can brag to his coworkers at whatever factory he ends up in. Mahai stared at me with a mix of contempt and jealousy. He couldn't stand that an orphan like me was chatting so easily with Su-yun. If he gets in, will you give up your own exam score? Guoren challenged. Mahai stiffened. He didn't dare take that bet. My grades in the academic subjects were actually top tier. So what if he gets in? Mahai snapped, trying to save face. He'll end up at some bottom-tier school with insane fees. He's an orphan. No mom, no dad. Who's paying his tuition? He'll be a laborer regardless. Guoren slammed his hand on the desk, his face red with rage. You've gone too far. Am I wrong? Mahai stood up, his knuckles cracking. You dare slam a desk at me? You're looking for trouble. We'll settle this in the next practical combat class. Guoren flinched and took a step back. Mahai was at the 6th level of awakening. He could take both of us down with one hand. Sit down, Mahai. A smooth voice interrupted. We're all classmates. There's no need for this. A handsome student named Zhang Wenxi stood up, a polished, perfect smile on his face. The class monitor, Zhang Wenxi, stepped in. Mahai immediately wiped the sneer off his face and replaced it with a fawning smile. Zhang Wenxi gave a small, dignified nod and looked toward the podium. Ning Chuan, go back to your seat, he said calmly. His voice was smooth, but his words were sharp. Mahai's words might be harsh, but he's not entirely wrong. You shouldn't use martial arts as an excuse to constantly bother Ms. Su. She works hard enough managing this class. Just worry about yourself. I glanced at Zhang Wenxi and felt a wave of disgust. He and Mahai were two sides of the same coin. Mahai was loud and crude, while Zhang Wenxi was subtle and manipulative. Both of them just wanted to step on others to feel superior, especially in front of a beautiful woman. Zhang Wenxi's eyes turned cold when he saw my expression, but then he noticed Su-yun watching. His face instantly shifted into a look of helpless disappointment. Don't get so worked up, Ning Chuan. To walk the path of martial arts, you need a calm heart. If you're too emotional, you'll never reach the peak. I let out a cold laugh. Zhang Wenxi was good. I had to give him that. In one breath, he managed to show off his own ambition while making me look like a temperamental child. But I didn't have time for his games. I had techniques to learn. I turned back to Su-yun. I just want to pick one more. Su-yun didn't answer right away. She knew I was an orphan. The other teachers had talked about it. She felt sorry for me. I was so close to the threshold of a decent college, and she didn't want to see me throw my future away on a hopeless gamble. To her, spending these final 100 days on a new B-rank technique was a total waste of time. Fine, she said after a long silence. You can pick another one, but on one condition. Tell me, I replied. A small smile played on her red lips. You have to reach the micro level in a technique first. You mean with Thunder Slash? I asked. I felt a surge of relief. My progress with Thunder Slash was already over 90% of the way through the proficient stage. I was almost there. Deal. I'll come find you once I hit the micro level. Mahai couldn't help himself. Ning Chuan, watch your tongue. You've only been practicing that move for a few days. Do you even know how hard it is to reach the micro level? I bet you haven't even mastered the basics yet. The classroom erupted in laughter. Even the students who didn't like Mahai thought I was being delusional. Mahai, don't be so mean, Zhang Wenxi added, though his tone was mocking. It's normal not to master a B-rank move in a few days. Even I struggled. It took me 5 whole days just to learn a simple C-rank technique. The kiss-asses in class immediately started chiming in, saying how Zhang Wenxi would have crushed the technique if he had tried it. Quiet, Su-yun barked, waving her hand to silence the room. She looked at me thoughtfully. Look, I won't make it that hard. Thunder Slash is a B-rank move. It might be too much. If you can get any technique, even a rank 1 move, to the micro level, I'll let you pick another B-rank skill. She was trying to help me. She saw me as a level 4 awakened student who was stuck. In her mind, focusing on a low-level move was the only way I could possibly stand a chance at a decent college. Only one B-rank move. I asked, testing the waters. Su-yun gave me a playful, challenging look. If you reach micro-level before the exams, you can ask for whatever you want. She clearly didn't think I could do it. The micro-level was a massive hurdle. Even for rank 1 techniques, Many geniuses spend a year reaching the peak of proficiency only to stay stuck there for a decade. I blinked. I just wanted more skills, but the way she said, "whatever you want," made the guys in the room go ballistic. Their eyes were practically shooting fire at me. "No problem. It's a deal," I said firmly. As I turned to walk back to my seat, I nearly jumped. Every guy in the room was staring at me like they wanted to skin me alive. Don't get the wrong idea," I muttered, heading back to my desk. "I just want to practice." Guorenyu leaned over and shoved his elbow into my ribs, grinning like a madman. "Nice move, man. You're officially the most hated guy in school. I thought you were just obsessed with Thunder Slash, but you were playing the long game for Ms. Su's favor this whole time. A total pro." I sighed. "I really just want the B-rank technique." I get it," he whispered, winking. "We're men. I understand. Keep it down." Mahai snapped, turning around with a dark scowl. Guorenyu waited for him to turn back before whispering, "Mahai is petty. He's going to be looking for a reason to jump us. We should lay low for a few days." "Don't worry," I smiled. "Give me a week." In my vision, the glowing numbers flickered. Thunder Slash, proficiency 93%. The next morning at 9 a.m., the sky was clear. A flock of purple birds streaked across the clouds, flying over the crowded training grounds of First High School. It was the day of the 100-day oath ceremony. Red banners hung everywhere on the green fences. The heroes compete, and I hold the blade. 1 second faster, 1 rank higher. Sharpen the sword for 12 years, shine for 100 days. Guorenyu looked at the banners, feeling the hype. "Man, this gets my blood pumping. I feel like I could actually work hard today." He followed that thought by taking a massive, greasy bite of crispy pork belly he'd snuck in. "You're better off buying antiques from old Luo," I joked, patting his shoulder. "The odds of you getting rich there are still better than you getting into a top college." I was holding my battered war sword in my right hand. It wasn't an ordinary blade, and I didn't feel safe leaving it in the classroom, so I brought it with me. "Look at you two," Mahai sneered, walking up behind us with his hands behind his back. "Two losers talking about college. You should be picking out which construction site you want to carry bricks at after graduation." He strutted away, head held high. "Pa." Guorenyu spat on the ground once Mahai was out of earshot. "So what if he's at the 6th level of awakening? Acting like he's a god. I'll talk about college if I want to." I watched Mahai's retreating back, my expression calm. Level 6. It wasn't going to be enough to stop me. If I performed at my normal level, I could get into a key university. In this world, that was the baseline for respect. Based on past exams, a level 4 awakening might get you into a bottom-tier school. Level 5 meant a decent average college. Level 6 was the requirement for the prestigious key universities. Anything level 7 or above was considered high-tier, the kind of strength that secured a spot at a famous name-brand academy. Then there was Galaxy University. It sat on a completely different level. Their admission standards were notoriously brutal. Even a peak level 9 student might not make the cut. Qingshan First High was a top school with over 3,000 students per grade, yet we only produced one Galaxy University student every 2 or 3 years. And even then, they usually got in as the lowest-ranked person in the class. When I told Guorenyu I wanted to go to Galaxy University, it was mostly a joke. 100 days was too short a time to close that gap. But then again, you never knew until the end. I squinted at a banner hanging on the fence. Gold letters shimmered in the sunlight. Asterisk, the outcome is not yet decided. You and I are both dark horses. Asterisk. The ceremony began. The student representative for the seniors was a girl named Lu Menghua. She was beautiful, so beautiful that many students called her the goddess of Qingshan High. When she took the stage, the cheers were deafening, far louder than the applause for the school leaders. Guorenyu didn't care. He stayed hidden in the back corner, stuffing his face with snacks. I wasn't listening either. I was busy studying my battered war sword. If I couldn't figure out what made this blade special, I'd get lowballed when I tried to sell it. "Guorenyu, look out!" A sharp scream from Su Yun cut through the air. Her face was pale as she pointed toward the sky. I looked up. A purple bird, the size of a wash basin, was diving from the clouds. It cut through the air with a high-pitched whistle, heading straight for Guorenyu. A thunder sparrow. My pupils contracted. It wasn't a demonic beast, but it carried a trace of thunder beast blood. They were famous for their speed, capable of hunting eagles. When they dived, they moved faster than a high-speed train. Usually, the police ignored them because they weren't true monsters, but this one looked desperate. It must have been hungry after the winter, and the smell of Guorenyu's pork belly had drawn it in. Guorenyu saw it, but he was too slow. He froze, terror washing over his face. At that speed, the impact would shatter his bones. Several powerful martial agents in the crowd moved to help, but like Su Yun, they were too far away. Guorenyu had picked the most isolated spot in the back to hide his eating. I was the only one near him, and as far as everyone knew, I was only level 4. The school officials broke into a cold sweat. This ceremony was being broadcast live on TV. If a student died on camera, no amount of PR could save them. Then, a sound like a crack of thunder exploded across the training ground. A flash of brilliant light surged upward. It was too fast to track with the naked eye. I moved. I swung. Thunderbolt slash. There was a wet thud. A spray of blood bloomed in the air. The thunder sparrow was sliced perfectly in half, from head to tail. The two pieces slammed into the ground on either side of Guorenyu, painting the dirt red. Inside my head, a notification chimed. The thunder sparrow's ancient blood has been detected. Thunderbolt slash has sensed the faint intent of thunder and entered a state of epiphany. Flash of insight triggered. Thunderbolt slash has reached the micro-level. A flood of new understanding filled my mind. The technique felt different now, sharper, more natural. It was a massive leap in power. I didn't care about the shocked stares from the crowd. I looked down at my old sword, feeling a bit dazed. I didn't expect the tiny trace of blood in a common raptor to trigger an epiphany. It was ridiculous, but I wasn't complaining. This meant I could finally start looking for a new B-rank technique. The crowd erupted. Did you hear that? The thunder sound when he swung. My God, that's the B-rank Thunderbolt slash. That sound was so solid. His mastery must be insane. Who is that? A student mastering a B-rank skill? Most of us are still struggling with D ranks. Guorenyu was shaking, covered in a cold sweat. He looked up and his eyes went wide again. Lin Yuan. Run. High above, 3 more thunder sparrows saw their fallen comrade. Their predatory instincts kicked in. They tucked their wings and dived like feathered arrows, aiming right for me. The school leaders panicked. 1 bird was a freak accident. 3 at once was a death sentence for anyone below level 6. Don't worry, I said. My voice was calm. Strength brings confidence. I gripped the hilt and flicked my wrist. Thunderbolt slash. Boom. 3 streaks of light cut through the air simultaneously. I only had 1 sword, but Thunderbolt slash was built for speed. At the micro level, I was a blur. I swung 3 times in less than a second, leaving afterimages on the retinas of everyone watching. Thud, thud, thud. 3 muffled sounds of steel meeting flesh rang out as one. I stood there, one hand on my blade, expressionless. A rain of blood mist fell in front of me. The 3 sparrows didn't even have time to scream before they were bisected, their remains crashing into the red-stained earth. The silence lasted for 3 seconds. Then, the training ground turned into a boiling pot of noise. I looked at the carcasses and felt a small pang of regret. No second epiphany. I guess the blood in these birds was just too thin to push the skill any further. I wondered what would happen if I faced a real thunder beast. I shook my head. I was just starting my path. A real beast was a problem for another day. The crowd saw me shake my head and misinterpreted it completely. To them, it looked like I was disappointed that the fight ended too quickly. He's a monster. Did you see that speed? I'm level 5 and I couldn't even follow his blade. That thunderclap, that's definitely the micro level. Why haven't we heard of this guy before? The exams were coming. It seemed the dark horses were finally stepping out of the shadows. The training ground was absolute chaos. People were reeling, their minds blown by what they'd just seen. The air was thick with the sound of intense, frantic discussion. To be honest, killing 3 thunder sparrows wasn't an impossible feat. We had dozens of seniors in the top rankings who could have done it. But performing a B-rank technique at the micro level? That changed everything. In a school as big as Qingshan First High, you could count the number of people who had mastered a skill to that degree on one hand, and that included the teachers. Su Yin stared at me, her beautiful eyes wide with shock. She knew better than anyone that I'd only asked her for the Thunderbolt/manual 3 days ago. Now, I was already at the micro level. It defied logic. Lin Yuan, you crazy bastard, how the hell did you do that? Guorenyu shouted. He was so excited he didn't even care about the blood on his clothes. Before I could even open my mouth to answer, he spun around to face Mahai, who was standing nearby looking like he'd swallowed a fly. Hey Mahai, Guorenyu yelled. Didn't you say Lin Yuan was just showing off? That he was a joke for picking Thunderbolt/? Why don't you go up there and show off like that? Mahai's face turned the color of pig's blood. He didn't know exactly what level my technique was at, but he wasn't blind. My blade speed was something he couldn't touch. Every word he'd said earlier was now a slap to his own face. Guorenyu wasn't done. He was the type to kick a man while he was down. Does Lin Yuan have the right to talk about elite universities now? With a B-rank skill at this level, top-tier schools might offer him a full scholarship. With your eyesight, maybe you should skip the exams. Come find me after graduation. I'll find you a job carrying bricks at a construction site. Mahai grit his teeth, his face twitching with rage. He had no comeback. He just turned on his heel and walked away. I gave Guorenyu a quick kick to the back of his knee. If I hadn't stepped in, you'd be dead, I said, shaking my head. You just got your life back and the first thing you want to do is talk trash. It's his fault for being such a jerk, Guorenyu muttered, scratching his head with a sheepish grin. Just then, the principal arrived with a group of school officials. He took one look at Guorenyu, who was still holding a half-eaten fried chicken leg, and his face darkened. Don't you know food is banned on the training grounds? That's a formal demerit. You're on cleaning duty for the entire month. Guorenyu's face fell. Then the principal turned to me. The stern expression vanished instantly, replaced by a smile so wide it nearly reached his ears. He clapped me hard on the shoulder. Well done, student. Facing danger with a blade in hand. You are the pride of Qingshan First High. Don't worry. The school is always generous to those who show such bravery. I noticed a TV crew nearby pointing their cameras at us. The principal gave me a subtle look, and I caught his drift immediately. I straightened my back and put on my most righteous face. It's all thanks to the school's excellent teaching, I said loudly. It gave me the strength and the courage to risk myself for others. The principal beamed. I could tell he liked my style. He'd probably increase my reward after that performance. He ordered the staff to clear away the bird carcasses and continue the ceremony, but nobody was listening to the speeches anymore. Everyone was whispering about me. I didn't care about the attention. I was focused on my broken warblade. I'd noticed something strange. This blade was covered in cracks. It looked like it would shatter if I tried to cut a vegetable with it. Yet it had survived 4 high-speed kills without a scratch. I squinted. The blood was gone. I'd seen the blade get drenched in the sparrow's blood, but now it was clean. Even weirder, some of the cracks looked shallower. A small notch on the edge had actually shrunk. The blade was repairing itself by drinking blood. My heart hammered against my ribs. This thing was way more valuable than I thought. I decided right then that I wasn't selling it. It was perfect for Thunderbolt/, and it clearly had secrets I needed to uncover. I need to give you a name, I whispered. It wasn't just a piece of scrap anymore. I looked at the silver edge and thought of the blood it had swallowed. Silver blood. Under the sunlight, the blade seemed to shiver slightly in response. Around noon, the ceremony finally ended. Lin Yuan. Come to my office. We need to talk. Su Yin walked up to me, her voice as smooth as water. Usually, being called to the office is bad news. But with Su Yin, every guy in the vicinity was staring at me with pure, unadulterated envy. I was officially at the top of the school's most hated list. What are you waiting for? Go. Guorenyu chuckled, giving me a shove. 10 minutes later, I was in Su Yun's office. She sat behind her desk, her clothes hugging her curves in a way that was honestly distracting. She studied me for a long moment. Can you explain it? Your Thunderbolt/ how? I kept my face neutral. I was practicing hard this morning and had a sudden epiphany. I felt like I was just one step away from the micro level. Then, in the heat of the moment on the training ground, trying to save Guorenyu, it just clicked. I broke through that final barrier. It wasn't a total lie. If you count the system's help as a sudden epiphany, it was basically the truth. An epiphany, Su Yun repeated softly, nodding. It was the only thing that made sense to her. You have incredible luck. Epiphanies don't care about talent, they're about chance. Many geniuses go their whole lives without one. She leaned forward, her expression serious. But listen to me. An epiphany is a gift, not something you can rely on. You can't expect to just get lucky every time you hit a wall. Real progress comes from the grind. Many students get stuck at a bottleneck, lose their patience, and give up. Don't be one of them. I grinned. I don't think I'll have that problem. I even practice in my sleep. Don't joke with me, she sighed, clearly thinking I was just riding the high of my success. She didn't realize that for me, practicing actually was effortless. I'm serious. It's the repetition that kills people. It gets boring. It gets painful. I'm different, I said honestly. Cultivation makes me happy. She shook her head, giving up on the lecture for now. Fine. Anyway, your Thunderbolt Slash has reached the micro level. Our agreement stands. What do you want? I saw her tense up slightly. She looked nervous. I realized she was probably worried I'd asked for something inappropriate since I was a teenage boy, and she was, well, Su Yun. I decided to put her out of her misery. I rubbed my hands together and gave her a sheepish smile. Well, it's about the techniques. She braced herself. I want to learn every single B-rank technique the school has, I said. Su Yun blinked. She looked like she'd misheard me. What? I want to learn them all, I repeated, louder this time. Every B-rank manual in the library. Su Yun let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing. She looked relieved, though she still seemed to think I was crazy. Lin Yuan, I appreciate the ambition, but that's impossible. It's not that I don't want to help, but the school has rules. The rules were strict. Every student was limited to learning only 3 or 4 martial arts techniques. It wasn't just about the workload. The martial seals used to transmit these techniques had a limited number of uses. I searched my memories and confirmed it. Usually, 3 or 4 techniques were more than enough for any high schooler to master over 3 years. The original owner of this body hadn't even used his full quota, focusing almost entirely on the violent bull strength to build his foundation. Su Yun tapped her chin, looking thoughtful. You chose a technique in your sophomore year, she reminded me. And a few days ago, you came to me for the Thunderbolt Slash. That leaves you with 2 slots left. Then I'll take 2 B-rank techniques, I said, feeling a bit disappointed. I really wanted them all, but I had to play by the rules for now. Su Yun sighed. She looked reluctant, but not because she was stingy. She was worried about my future. In her mind, since I had already reached the micro level with the Thunderbolt Slash, I should be focusing on my breathing methods to increase my raw cultivation level. If I could break into the awakened realm before the entrance exams, I'd have a shot at a top-tier university. But she also seemed afraid that if she said no, I'd ask for something even more inappropriate. Fine, she muttered, giving in. 2 it is. But I'm going to the martial arts building with you. No problem, I replied. We left the office and walked across the campus. It was noon, so the martial arts building was mostly deserted. I'd been here once before, so I didn't waste time looking around. I headed straight for the top floor where the B-rank manuals were kept. The top floor was wide and empty. In the center stood a row of bulletproof glass display cases divided into over 30 compartments. Inside each one sat a square metal cube, slightly larger than a fist. Those were the martial seals. Some techniques couldn't be described with mere words. They carried a specific intent that could only be passed down through these seals. What kind of techniques are you looking for? Su Yun asked. I thought about it for a moment. I can already fight above my level, but I'm fragile. I want a body-hardening technique to boost my defense. Su Yun's eyes lit up. She nodded. Good choice. Body hardening is notoriously difficult to practice, but once you succeed, it benefits you for life. What about the second one? I rubbed my chin, weighing my options. I was torn. Part of me wanted a movement technique. I had the Gale steps, but that was a basic level 1 skill. A high-level movement technique paired with my micro-level Thunderbolt Slash would make me a nightmare on the battlefield. But another part of me wanted an unarmed combat style. I took a deep breath. I'll take an unarmed combat technique. The entrance exams changed every year. This year, there was a rumor they might focus on unarmed combat. To get the highest score, I couldn't have any glaring weaknesses. My priority was getting into a top school, maybe even Galaxy University. Once I was there, resources wouldn't be an issue. Besides, my Gale steps were leveling up fast enough to last me a while. Suyin actually smiled. She looked relieved. She had probably followed me here fearing I'd be blinded by my success and picked 2 more saber techniques. 15 minutes later, I made my choice. First, the Eternal Slaughter Art. It was an unarmed style known for being vicious and unpredictable. The strikes came from impossible angles, making it nearly impossible to defend against. More importantly, the internal force it generated was devastating. Once mastered, it could shatter a target's bones with a single touch. Second, the Vajra body. This was a body-hardening technique with 9 levels. At full mastery, the body became so tough that bullets would bounce off. I chose it for another reason, too. It was actually an incomplete manual. If it were whole, it would have 18 levels and be ranked as an S-class technique. If I ever found the rest, the potential was limitless. Suyun's lip twitched as she stared at my choices. Are you serious? She looked like she regretted being happy earlier. The Vajra body and the Eternal Slaughter Art are powerful, yes, but their difficulty is insane. These are the absolute peak of B rank. They are harder to learn than most A rank techniques. She tried to soften her tone, playing the mentor. Don't just chase raw power, Lin Yuan. Think about the big picture. Why not take the Steel Body and the Iron Blood 36? They're military grade, they complement each other perfectly, and there are plenty of tutorials online to help you. I'm not changing them, I said, tilting my head back and looking her in the eye. I tried to look as heroic as possible. Weaklings fear difficulty. The strong face it head-on. A true warrior dares to swing his blade at the greatest challenges. I saw a vein pop on Suyun's forehead. I could tell what she was thinking. A level 4 awakened kid calling himself the strong? She clearly thought my recent epiphany had gone to my head. Fine, pick them then, she snapped, gritting her teeth. Just don't come crying to me when you regret it. She figured that with my micro-level saber skills, I'd get into a decent college anyway. Maybe hitting a wall now would be a good life lesson for me. She called the administrator, who unlocked the cases and handed over the 2 metal cubes. Go on, she sighed, pointing to the private cultivation rooms. Thanks, Teacher Sue, I grinned. The process was simple. I pressed the seals to my forehead, and a flood of information rushed into my brain. Within minutes, the techniques were etched into my mind. I called up my system interface. Level, Awaken level 4, Violent Bull Strength, Proficient, 25%, Gale Steps, Competent, 7%, Thunderbolt Slash, Micro, 3%, Eternal Slaughter Art, Basic, 0%, Vajra Body, Level 1, 0%. I noticed the Vajra Body was tracked by levels rather than the usual mastery ranks. That made sense for a body hardening technique. I couldn't tell how fast they would level up yet, but I'd know by tonight. I walked out of the room, and Suyun was still there waiting. After returning the seals, we headed out. Teacher Sue, I said, flashing her a wide smile as we walked. How about you treat me to lunch? I promised to study hard and get into a great university. I didn't have any hidden motives. I was just broke. I didn't want to sell my silver blood saber yet, and until I found another way to make money, I had to save every penny. Suyun hesitated, then nodded. Fine. There's a decent place on the commercial street outside the school. She seemed relieved I was asking for noodles instead of something impossible this time. Suyun's treat left me with a good impression of her. After finishing the free lunch, I headed back to the classroom. The afternoon was filled with 3 core subjects: math, physics, and chemistry. These weren't just hurdles for the college entrance exam. They were vital for martial arts. The creator of the Thunderbolt Slash held a PhD in physics. He once famously said that without aerodynamics, the Thunderbolt Slash wouldn't even be faster than a Thunder Beast. Even the nuclear explosion god Fist, one of the Federation's strongest techniques, required a deep understanding of nuclear fusion and fission. You couldn't even start learning it without the science. Mastery of these subjects didn't make you a powerhouse, but it was the foundation needed to reach the peak. Luckily, my predecessor was a good student. I didn't find the lessons difficult. When the bell rang for a break, I stretched my neck and looked around. The entire class was pointing at me, whispering in small groups. I was used to it by now. After killing those thunder sparrows at the training ground, I had become famous. A level 4 awakened with a high-level B-rank technique was a rare sight. Manhwa didn't like the attention I was getting. He let out a cold snort to the students around him. "You're overestimating him," he sneered. "Thunder sparrows aren't that hard to kill. They aren't high-level beasts. They're stupid. As long as you calculate the timing of the dive, you can kill them without any special techniques." Manhwa walked over to my desk and looked down at me like he was conducting an interrogation. "Am I right, Lin Yuan? What's the mastery level of your Thunderbolt Slash? Is it even at the proficient rank?" I looked up at him and tilted my head. "Why the change of heart? Didn't you say earlier that I hadn't even reached the basic level?" Manhwa's face stiffened. "Don't talk nonsense. Just answer the question." "If you want to know so badly," I said, my eyes turning cold, "why don't you feel it for yourself? Martial arts is about a clear mind and swift action. If you can fight, don't waste words." My hand blurred as I gripped the silver blood saber and stood up in one motion. A sound like a clap of thunder erupted from my body. I unleashed the Thunderbolt Slash right there in the classroom. A flash of light illuminated the room, followed by the roar of the strike. Manhwa didn't expect me to actually attack. He blinked, and by the time he realized what happened, my blade was pressed firmly against his throat. The cold metal sent a shiver through his skin. "So," I grinned at him, baring my teeth, "what level do you think I am now?" Manhwa turned pale. Then, his fear turned into a frantic rage. "You're looking for death." He raised his foot to kick me, but he froze halfway. I pressed the blade deeper into his neck. He could feel the edge cutting in. My smile told him everything he needed to know. If he moved, I would open his throat. You're attacking me in private?" Manhwa swallowed hard, his voice shaking. "You want to get expelled?" He was trying to act tough for the crowd, but everyone could see he was folding. In a student conflict, only the loser starts quoting the school rules. The students were stunned. Manhwa was in the top 10 of our class and a close friend of the class monitor, Zhang Wenxi. He was usually the bully, not the victim. "Lin Yuan, put that sword away." Our physics teacher, Mr. Wang, shouted from the podium as he packed his books. "I know your Thunderbolt Slash has reached the micro level, but this is dangerous. One slip with a technique that powerful, and we'd have a tragedy on our hands." "Sorry, Mr. Wang," I said smoothly. I spun the silver blood saber and sheathed it. Manhwa was just curious about my mastery level. I wanted him to experience it firsthand. Manhwa stood there, his face shifting between pale and beet red. He had become a laughingstock. A B-rank technique at the micro level meant I could fight people 2 levels above me. No wonder I didn't give him any face. The classroom buzzed. People realized that with this kind of lethality, I was no longer just a struggling student. I had a real shot at a top-tier university. Zhang Wenxi's expression darkened. He liked being the center of attention, and he hated that I was stealing his spotlight, especially after I had rejected his invitation earlier. He stood up and walked over, flashing a practiced, diplomatic smile. "A prestigious university is still a long shot," Zhang Wenxi said to the room. "I'm not looking down on Lin Yuan. His attack power is undeniable. But the entrance exam isn't a duel. It tests comprehensive ability. Being a level 4 with level 6 combat power only gets you into an average college." He paused, enjoying the silence. 2 years ago, the exam required students to cross the Longji Mountains. That's 300 kilometers. Without stamina, agility, and observation skills, raw power is useless. "The monitor is right," someone chimed in. "Just having a strong attack makes you a brute, nothing more." Jealousy is a powerful thing. People who couldn't achieve what I had were quick to try and tear me down. "If you're so smart, why don't you go learn a B-rank technique to the micro level?" Guoren Yu snapped, defending me. Manhwa found his confidence again and sneered. "It's not just the exam. It's life after graduation. The modern federation doesn't have that much fighting. If your core level is low, nobody will hire you. What's the use of one-sword technique? You'll be unemployed the day you graduate." I toyed with the hilt of my saber. I should have drawn a little blood earlier. Maybe then he would have learned to keep his mouth shut. "President Liu?" "What are you doing here?" someone shouted. The room went dead silent. A girl walked through the door. She had a delicate face, pale skin, and long hair that transitioned from light green to deep blue, shimmering like a nebula. It was Lu Minghua. She was the student council president and the star of the morning ceremony. She was at the peak of level 9, just half a step away from being a true martial artist. She was the school's best hope for Galaxy University. Zhang Wenxi's smile brightened as he hurried toward her. Manhwa, did you need something? You could have just sent for me. I'm not here for you, Lu Manhwa said coldly. She didn't even slow down. She walked right past Zhang Wenxi, leaving him standing there like an idiot. His face flushed a deep, embarrassed red. The students nearby were biting their lips, trying their best not to burst out laughing. If he hadn't been the class monitor, they probably would have roared. Lu Manhwa kept walking until she stopped directly in front of me. The entire room went silent as they watched her. Student Lin Yuan, right? She asked. A faint, elegant smile played on her lips. I raised an eyebrow, feeling a bit surprised. In my memory, the original owner of this body and Lu Manhwa were total strangers. Did you need something? I asked. She nodded slightly. I saw you kill those thunder sparrows this morning. Your mastery of the thunderbolt slash is incredible. It's far beyond mine. To demonstrate, she pressed her fingers together and swung her hand forward in a chopping motion. A low rumble echoed from her body, but compared to the thunderous crack I produced, her sound was muffled and scattered. It didn't sound like real lightning at all. My thunderbolt slash has been stuck below the proficient level for a long time, she admitted. I'd like to ask you to guide my training. She paused, then added, as for the fee, I can pay you 1,000 yuan per hour. Does that work for you? The classroom exploded into whispers. Lu Manhwa, the girl at the top of the school's food chain, was asking me for help and offering that kind of money? In Qingshan City, the average monthly salary was barely 4,000 yuan. She was offering a quarter of that for a single hour of work. But I didn't answer immediately. I just stood there. What are you waiting for? Guoren Yu hissed next to me, sounding desperate. I wasn't being greedy, I was worried. The truth was, my micro-level mastery came from my system. The skill had literally trained itself. I had the insights and the muscle memory, but I didn't actually know the difficulties of learning it the normal way. I didn't want to scam her, mostly because I didn't dare to. Her family owned the Jidao Martial Arts Hall, the biggest one in the city. If I tried to fake it and got caught, I wouldn't just lose the money. I'd probably get a beating. But 3,000 yuan? I couldn't let that go. As I frowned in thought, Lu Manhwa must have misread my hesitation. Student Lin, she said, dipping her head slightly. That was my mistake. 1,000 is the standard rate at my family's gym. But since the Thunderbolt Slash is one of the hardest B-rank techniques, the fee should be higher. I didn't mean to insult you. Let's try 3,000 per hour. Is that acceptable? I blinked. Well, that was an unexpected bonus. I'll take the job, I said firmly. Even if I turned out to be a terrible teacher, I figured I could at least get through the first hour and pocket the cash. 3,000 yuan was nearly 2 months' worth of my government pension. With the exams coming up, I needed every resource I could get. Good. Time is short, Lu Manhwa said, her tone businesslike. We'll start today. I'll wait for you at the school gate after class. She turned and left the room. The other students stared at me with a mix of envy and pure shame. Just minutes ago, they were mocking me, saying my technique was useless for my career. Now, I had a high-paying job before the sun had even set. Guoren Yu laughed loudly, making sure everyone heard him. 3,000 an hour. That's over 100,000 a month. Even professional martial artists don't make that much in this city. He looked over at Ma Hai and grinned. What was that you said? Low core level means unemployment? Looks like someone's eating their words. Ma Hai's face turned purple. He didn't say a word, just lowered his head and slunk out of the classroom like a beaten dog. Nearby, Zhang Wenxi's expression was just as dark. He stared at the door where Lu Manhwa had disappeared, his eyes filled with something cold and calculating. At 5 o'clock, the school bell rang. The evening sun draped the city in a soft, orange glow. I walked out of the gates, checking my phone for the location of the martial arts hall, when a bright red sports car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, revealing Lu Manhwa's pale, sharp features. Get in, Lin Yuan. It'll be faster if I drive. I glanced at the logo on the hood. An Ing sports car. Even the base model cost at least 5 million yuan. My 3,000 yuan fee was probably pocket change to her. Thanks, I said, hopping into the passenger seat. The car roared to life as she merged into traffic. "We're going to the Jidao Martial Arts Hall," she said, her eyes on the road. "The facilities there are better for training. I'll have a driver take you home afterward." "I appreciate it," I replied. For the rest of the ride, I stayed quiet, racking my brain for a way to actually teach her. If I could keep this job until the exams, I could afford enough resources to skyrocket my power. I might even have a shot at a top 10 university. But I had to deliver results first. 10 minutes later, she drifted the car into a perfect stop in front of a massive building. It was only 3 stories tall, but it covered as much ground as our school's entire training field. A man in a black suit ran over immediately. "Miss," he said, bowing. "Prepare a private training room," she said, tossing him the keys without looking. I followed her inside. The lobby was bright and chaotic, filled with over 1,000 students in training uniforms. There were little kids and teenagers my age, all sweating through their drills. Most families in the city sent their kids to halls like this because school teachers had too many students to give everyone personal attention. We took the elevator to the 2nd floor and entered a soundproof room. It was deathly quiet. "So, Student Lin," she said, turning to face me. "How should we begin?" I cleared my throat. I needed to manage her expectations. "I haven't been practicing the Thunderbolt slash for very long," I told her. My breakthrough to the micro level was mostly due to a sudden moment of enlightenment. "I'll do my best, but I might not be the most traditional teacher." I gave her a reason to explain away my skill, and she took it. "Don't be so formal," Manhwa said, stretching her body slightly with a faint smile. "Just call me by my name. Don't be nervous. With your micro-level mastery of the Thunderbolt slash, guiding me shouldn't be hard at all. I'll perform the technique, and you just point out my flaws." I breathed a massive sigh of relief. This was much simpler than I had imagined. I had been worried she'd expect me to explain how to break through a bottleneck, something I had no clue how to put into words. In reality, bottlenecks are mysterious. They require a practitioner's own sudden realization, not a lecture. The job was mine. 3,000 credits an hour. I couldn't hide the slight curve of my lips. With this money, my cultivation speed was about to explode. The top 10 universities in the Federation didn't feel like a distant dream anymore. They felt like a destination. As I was mentally debating which elite school to pick, Manhwa walked to a weapon rack. She picked up a long, unsharpened combat blade and pointed it straight at me. "One more thing," she added. "You're also going to be my sparring partner. We'll fight using only the Thunderbolt slash. Real combat is the best way to deepen my understanding." My face twitched. I had no intention of trying to look tough in front of a beautiful girl when the stakes were this high. "I'm only at Awakening level 4, I said bluntly. It wasn't that I was a coward. She was at the peak of Awakening level 9. Even with my perfect level technique, the raw gap in physical power was too massive to bridge. She could crush me with pure strength alone. "My fault. I didn't clarify," she said, her lips pulling into an apologetic smile. "I'll suppress my strength. I'll keep my speed and power at the same level as yours." She paused, looking me over. "What breathing technique do you use?" "Earth rank, the mighty bull strength," I replied, shrugging. I knew why she asked. Different breathing techniques tempered the body differently. The higher the grade, the better the boost to strength, speed, and senses. But high-grade techniques were a double-edged sword. They consumed massive amounts of energy. Without enough resources and food to back them up, they actually slowed you down. That was why I hadn't switched to a higher level one yet. My current diet couldn't support it. "Let's begin then," Manhwa said. She took a deep breath, her expression turning solemn. She raised her blade, and with a sudden crack of thunder from her movements, she swung. She kept it slow so I could track the motion. "Your wrist angle is wrong," I said after a moment of thought. "It's too high. That gives you more power, sure, but the Thunderbolt slash is about pure speed. Speed is the foundation." "I'll try again," she said, swinging once more. "Still not right. It looks too forced. This style doesn't have fixed moves. The core is the simultaneous exertion of multiple muscle groups across your whole body." Under my guidance, she practiced over and over. An hour slipped by before we knew it. "Let's stop the drills there," she said, taking a towel from a nearby waiter to wipe the sweat from her forehead. "Now we spar." "Fine," I said. I grabbed a training blade from the rack. Ever since I had killed those thunder sparrows this morning, my mindset had changed. I wasn't afraid of a fight anymore. We stood in the center of the room, facing off. "Start," she barked. She lunged, her foot sinking deep into the thick floor mats. In 2 steps, she was on me. A boom echoed from her body as she slashed, the blade whistling through the air. I narrowed my eyes and gripped my hilt. My blade tore through the air from top to bottom, aiming to intercept her horizontal strike. My technique was 3 levels higher than hers. Since she was matching my power, I should have had the advantage. Clang! The blades collided, sending sparks flying. The sound of metal on metal was deafening. But to my surprise, I didn't feel a heavy impact. A feint. My heart sank. Lu Mingyue's wrist flicked, tilting her blade inward. She let my strength slide right off her edge while her tip swept toward my throat. The polished blade reflected my eyes. There was a flash of panic there, but I didn't lose my cool. I forced my blade back in a desperate parry. My micro-level speed was incredible, leaving a silver afterimage in the air. Clang! Sparks sprayed like arrows. My body shook, and I stumbled back several steps. Lu Mingyue didn't pursue. This was practice, not a death match. I stomped my foot down to steady myself, looking at her with confusion. Our power was equal, and my technique was better. Why was I on the back foot? It felt like I was punching cotton. Then it clicked. My combat experience was trash. Neither I nor the original owner of this body knew how to actually fight a person. Killing birds was just a matter of overwhelming stats. Fighting someone like Lu Mingyue, who had likely been trained since she could walk, was a different world. But that was okay. Combat is just another skill. With practice, I'd learn when to strike, when to defend, and when to dodge. I stepped forward again, my movements fast as wind. We clashed. If she was using me to polish her technique, I would use her to fix my lack of experience. For the next 30 minutes, the room was filled with the constant bang 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 of clashing steel. Sparks erupted like festive fireworks. Finally, I called it. It wasn't that I didn't want the money. I'd stay all night if I could, but my body was done. The high-intensity sparring had drained my stamina completely. I had to lean on my sword just to stay upright. "This is working," Lu Mingyue said, a satisfied smile on her face. "I can feel the bottleneck loosening. Let's do this every day until I reach the mastery level." She was at the peak of the 9th level, so she wasn't even winded. I just nodded, too tired to speak. She glanced at the clock. "Almost 2 hours. Your skill is even higher than I thought, so we'll call it a full 2 hours." "Thanks," I rasped. "Can I be paid daily?" I needed that cash for resources immediately. "Of course," she said. "I was planning on settling up every day anyway." Lu Mingyue smiled and glanced sideways at the middle-aged man standing behind her. She asked Uncle Yang to go grab 6,000 credits in cash. He nodded and left quickly. I waited, my muscles still twitching from the exertion. A short while later, I was sitting in the back of a black sedan. Uncle Yang was driving. I didn't want him dropping me off right at my doorstep in the old district. It was a lonely, remote area with few residents, and I preferred to keep my private life private. I asked him to drop me at the large shopping plaza nearby instead. It was the only place to get supplies, even if the rent in my neighborhood was dirt cheap at $400 a month. The car pulled over. I thanked Uncle Yang, stepped out, and headed straight into the plaza. I didn't wonder. I went directly to the counter selling monster meat. This wasn't like a normal butcher shop. Armed guards patrolled the area like they were protecting a bank vault. Security was tight because monster meat was liquid gold. The cheap stuff cost hundreds per pound. The high-quality cuts were astronomical. The salesman behind the counter was a middle-aged man who saw my school uniform and grinned. He offered me some prime horned pig meat, claiming it was full of energy and easy to absorb. He said it was on sale for 888 credits a pound. My teeth ached just looking at the price tag. I did the math. The 6,000 I just earned would barely buy 7 pounds. With my appetite, that wouldn't even last 2 meals. I scanned the counter and pointed to a different pile. I asked about the meat priced at 399 credits. The salesman told me it was also horned pig, but from the hind leg. The energy content was the same, but it was incredibly hard to digest. For most students, It was a waste of money because they could only practice their breathing techniques for a few hours a day. The energy would just sit in their gut and go to waste. My eyes lit up. My breathing technique never stopped. Slow digestion wasn't a flaw for me. It was a feature. I told him I'd take 15 pounds. It cost me 5,900 credits. As I handed over the cash, I felt a physical pang of pain in my chest. The money hadn't even gotten warm in my pocket before it was gone. But I didn't regret it. Strength was the only investment that mattered. I grabbed some ginger, garlic, and scallions on my way out. Back at my small apartment, I threw everything into a pressure cooker. It wasn't gourmet, but it kept the nutrients intact. When it was done, I didn't care about the heat. I tore into the meat like a starving animal. After a full afternoon of fighting Manhwa, I was hollowed out. A few bites in, the mechanical voice echoed in my head. My savage bull strength felt the surge of energy. My cultivation speed jumped by over 300%. I grinned. At this rate, I'd hit the 5th level of awakening in no time. After dinner, I pulled up my system interface to check my progress on the new skills. 1,000-year slaughter, basic, 2%. Vajra body, level 1, 1%. I frowned. It had been nearly 10 hours since I started. The slaughter technique was moving at a decent pace, about 5 or 6% a day. That made sense, but the Vajra body was crawling. It was slower than a B-rank offensive skill, which didn't add up. Physical tempering techniques like the Vajra body usually required external help, medicinal baths, or specialized resources to speed up the hardening of the body. Pure energy from meat wasn't enough. I grabbed my phone and searched for the medicinal ingredients needed for the Vajra body. My face twitched. The prices were insane. They were sold by the gram, like gold. The money I made from Manhwa could barely cover my food. I needed a new way to make bank if I wanted to level up my defense. The next morning at 8, I walked toward the training grounds at school. It was time for combat class. Our class teacher, Su-Yun, stood before us. She didn't waste time with lectures. She told us to pair up and start sparring. Guorinyu walked toward me with a smirk, ready for our usual routine of slacking off. But a tall figure stepped in his way. It was Mahai. He looked at me with a cold sneer. He told me he needed a sparring partner for the upcoming exams. He noticed I didn't have my blade. In combat class, weapons were banned for safety anyway. He barked that he was doing me a favor by challenging me. He said if I refused, I was ungrateful and owed him a public apology. The other students stopped to watch, curious to see if I'd back down. I stretched my neck and told him to bring it. I wasn't doing it for pride. Sparring with Manhwa was restricted because I had to focus on her needs. With Mahai, I could go all out. He was 2 levels higher than me, which meant the pressure would be intense. That was exactly what I needed to sharpen my skills. Mahai mocked my courage, telling me that having a hard spine without the strength to back it up was a mistake. He lunged, covering 10 meters in a single stride, his hand whistling through the air toward my face. Mahai's right arm snapped straight, stiff as an iron axe. He swung it toward my face with a heavy, whistling force. It was the battle axe chop, a brutal, unarmed technique built for raw power. He was fast. My eyes narrowed as I felt the wind from his strike. His speed was terrifying, proving his cultivation level was no joke. But I didn't panic. I crossed my arms in front of my face, bracing for the impact. The collision sounded like a dull thud. A massive wave of force slammed into me, too heavy to stop cold. I had to retreat, backpedaling frantically to bleed off the momentum. My heels dug deep into the training ground, tearing up chunks of grass with every step. I stumbled back 7 or 8 paces before I finally regained my balance. My sleeves were shredded. The skin on my forearms immediately turned a deep, angry red, swelling up from the impact. Then, a familiar notification flashed in my mind. Your body has sustained damage. The diamond body technique feels guilty for its failure and is now training at maximum capacity. Progress speed is skyrocketing. I raised an eyebrow. This was a pleasant surprise. It seemed that as long as I engaged in hand-to-hand combat, I could level up my defense even without expensive medicinal baths. Mahai didn't give me a second to breathe. He let out a cold laugh, sensing he had the upper hand. He lunged again, his fingers curving into iron hooks. This was the fox hunter's claw. His hand tore through the air with a sharp whistle, aiming to rip right through me. I pushed off the ground, activating my swift wind steps. I had already reached the proficient level with this movement technique. With a quick diagonal shift, I blurred past his reach. As he overextended, I pivoted to his flank. I pressed my fingers together, forming a blade, and thrust them toward Mahai's throat. The air vibrated with a sound like tearing silk. Child's play, Mahai sneered. As a level 6 awakened, his reflexes were sharp. He tracked my movement in less than a second and swung his fist to intercept my wrist. But just as he was about to hit me, his expression changed. My right arm gave a sudden, crisp shake. It felt like my bones had shifted, allowing my hand to snake around his guard at a bizarre, impossible angle. It looked like a venomous serpent swaying its head. Slap! The sound echoed across the field. I caught Mahai right across the face with a massive amount of force. His head snapped to the side. A bright red handprint bloomed on his cheek as the crowd gasped in shock. That was the hidden snake strike, one of the lethal moves from the eternal killing art. It allowed me to change direction mid-strike, making it nearly impossible to predict. I felt a pang of regret, though. If my mastery were higher, that strike would have crushed his windpipe instead of just stinging his pride. Nearby, Su Yun's eyes widened. She looked stunned. I had only started learning the eternal killing art yesterday at noon. To pull off a move like that already was unheard of. Was it another epiphany? She stared at me, wondering if my true talent lay in my comprehension, the ability to master complex techniques in a fraction of the time it took others. The crowd erupted into whispers. A level 4 had just slapped a level 6. Even if Mahai wasn't seriously injured, the humiliation was absolute. We underestimated him, one student whispered. He knows more than just the thunderbolt slash. Guorinyu, hiding in the crowd, shouted at the top of his lungs. Mahai, how embarrassing. Didn't you say you were going to teach him a lesson? Why are you the one getting slapped? Mahai's face turned a shade of purple that matched his new bruise. He looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and die. He pointed a trembling finger at me, but no words came out. The slap was a hard, undeniable fact. I guess you failed to show me my place, I said with a thin smile, rubbing my fingers together. Action speaks louder than words, but honestly, actually hitting your face feels way better. Don't get cocky, Mahai roared, losing his mind. I was just careless. He charged at me like a wounded tiger, desperate to land a hit and reclaim his dignity. I met him head on. I cycled through everything I had, swift wind steps, diamond body, and the eternal killing art. I pushed my combat power to the absolute limit. I was still at a disadvantage. He was 2 levels higher, meaning he was faster, stronger, and tougher. My body was quickly covered in bruises and my knuckles were bleeding, but my understanding of real combat was sharpening by the second. I ignored the pain and stayed focused, timing my strikes with cold precision. Mahai's attacks were fierce, but he couldn't take me down. The bell rang 15 minutes later, signaling the end of the session. The crowd stood in stunned silence as we finally pulled apart. We were still at a stalemate. You're a lunatic, Mahai spat, wiping blood from his mouth. He had been winning on paper, but I had forced him into a war of attrition, trading blow for blow. He didn't realize that while his hits hurt me more, I was happy to take the damage to level up. I was gasping for air, my body a map of purple welts and swelling. But I was grinning. I looked at my internal interface. Diamond body level 1, progress 5%. That one fight had boosted my progress by 3%, more than a whole day of solo training. Mahai stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. You better quit that job as Lumingua's sparring partner. Someone like her is out of your league. If you don't, I'll beat you every single day. He glared at me. Even without combat class, I'll find a reason to jump you. The school won't stop me. Try me. I blinked. A beating every day? From a high-level sparring partner for free? I almost laughed out loud at my good luck. I'm out of her league. I mocked, looking him up and down. And you think you're in it? My dad is a multi-millionaire, Mahai hissed, leaning into my ear with a cold, arrogant sneer. We own 7 properties. What do you have, orphan? This beating is a greeting from Brother Zhang, Mahai sneered, his voice dripping with arrogance. You'd better be smart. Otherwise, your end will be worse than you can imagine. Brother Zhang. I repeated, narrowing my eyes. You mean Zhang Wenxi? As long as you know, Mahai said. He seemed to enjoy the drama, striking a cold pose before turning on his heel and marching away. I watched him go, my mind racing. Was this about Lu Mingyue or something else? I glanced over at Zhang Wenxi, who was standing not far away. I rubbed my chin but didn't move to confront him. Zhang Wenxi had reached the 7th stage of awakening. He was a high-level practitioner. Even if I used my silver blood warblade, I wouldn't be his match yet. I'd settle this debt later. Lin Yuan, are you okay? Should I take you to the school clinic? Guo Rinyu rushed over, his face pale with worry. I shrugged and gave him a painful smile. It's a small problem. It looks bad, but it's mostly surface stuff. A little medicinal oil and a few days of rest, and I'll be fine. The nearby students overheard me and looked over with newfound respect. Fighting someone 2 stages above me and holding my own was no small feat. Come to my office, a voice said. It was soft, like flowing water. Suyun appeared at my side. Instantly, the admiration from the male students vanished, replaced by burning jealousy. For a moment, they forgot I was the school's top target. They just wanted to be in my shoes. Inside the office, Suyun stared at me, a faint, teasing smile playing on her lips. Don't just stand there. You don't need to be so formal in front of your teacher. Sit down. I'll stand, I said, coughing slightly. While the adrenaline was pumping, I hadn't felt much. But now that things had calmed down, the dull ache of my injuries was becoming crystal clear. Every tiny movement sent a jolt of pain through my body. Only my stubbornness kept me from grimacing. Suyun couldn't help but laugh. 4th stage against the 6th, and you dared to trade blow for blow. I actually thought you weren't afraid of pain. She opened her right hand. A cluster of emerald green light emerged from her palm, swirling like liquid. My eyes widened. I watched the glow intently. Is that force? I asked. Only official martial artists could master that kind of power. Stop staring and get closer, Suyun said. It makes it easier to treat you. With a thought, she sent the green light floating toward me. It expanded into a thick mist, wrapping around my body and seeping into my skin. It felt like cool water washing over me. The soreness faded instantly. A few minutes later, the light vanished. I felt no pain at all. I looked down at my hands. The swelling was gone. Even the split skin on my knuckles had completely healed. How did you do that? I asked, genuinely shocked. Was an official martial artist really this powerful? And Suyun was considered one of the weaker ones. The top-tier experts, the ones compared to gods. Maybe those stories weren't exaggerations after all. You're too weak right now. There's no need to know the details, Suyun said, waving her hand dismissively. Once you reach the 9th stage of awakening, your university tutors will tell you. She pulled a square, gauze-wrapped package from her desk drawer. It was about the size of a soccer ball. The school leaders asked about you after you killed that thunder sparrow to save Guo Rinyu, she explained, handing the package to me. After some discussion, they decided to give you this. I took it. A faint, medicinal scent drifted to my nose. A medicine pack? Yes, Suyun nodded. It's specifically for the diamond body medicinal bath. Just throw it in water and soak. Teacher Su, thank you. I grinned. This was exactly what I needed. Suyun rolled her eyes. Don't get too excited. The bath only helps a little with the cultivation. It doesn't change the fact that diamond body is incredibly hard to master. Don't expect to break through to the 2nd level before the college entrance exams. What if I didn't have the medicine? I asked, curious about the normal pace. If you practice day and night without stopping, Suyun said bluntly. And if you were lucky, you might hit the 2nd level by the time you graduate university. She was clearly trying to discourage me, so I'd focus on my breathing techniques instead. But she didn't realize her mistake. I actually let out a small laugh. Take your medicine and get back to class, Suyun snapped, gritting her teeth. She was so annoyed she forgot to even ask about my martial arts talent. Goodbye, Teacher Su. I walked out of the office, feeling great. She completely misunderstood how my diamond body worked. Even without the stimulus of an injury, my progress was over 2% a day. I'd hit the 2nd level in about a month. For a normal person, it took 4 years. When I got back to the classroom, everyone stared. Guo Rinyu circled me, looking confused. Where are your injuries? Teacher Su used her force to heal me, I said casually. I heard the sound of hearts breaking all over the room. Healing someone with force wasn't easy, especially with as many bruises as I had. The fact that Suyun went through the trouble for me made every guy in the room lose their minds. Mahai sat in the corner, rubbing his swollen face with a bottle of ice water. He looked like he wanted to cry. He was an elite student, yet Suyun hadn't offered to heal him. He glared at me, his eyes full of hate. After school, I took Lu Mingyue's red sports car to the Jidao dojo. Like the day before, I coached her, demonstrated techniques, and worked until I was exhausted. I pocketed my 6,000 credits, bought 15 pounds of high-energy pork, and headed home. It was time to test the bath. I ran the water in the tub, not caring about the exact amount as long as it covered my body. I tossed the medicine pack in. Within seconds, the water turned a bright, golden orange, looking almost like juice. I stripped down and climbed in. The system voice rang in my head immediately. My diamond body technique was absorbing the energy at a furious rate. Progress increased by 1%. Progress increased by 1%. The mechanical voice kept chiming. Between the two fights and the long day, I was exhausted. As the warmth of the medicinal water soaked into my pores, my eyes grew heavy, and I drifted into a deep sleep. I woke up the next morning to the sun streaming through the small window. The water in the tub was crystal clear again. Every drop of medicine had been absorbed. I pinched my skin. It felt incredibly firm, yet flexible, like high-quality treated leather. I felt a surge of power. I quickly pulled up my system interface. Diamond body, level 2. Progress, 13%. I froze. I had broken through in a single night, and then some. The effect of the medicinal bath was way beyond my expectations. My heart hammered against my ribs. If I could get enough of these medicine packs, I could reach the 9th level in no time. At that stage, even guns wouldn't be able to hurt me. I hopped out of the tub, feeling like a new man, and started wolfing down my breakfast. I needed to find a way to get more of that medicine. I pushed my legs to the limit, sprinting toward Qingshan First High. It was barely 7 in the morning when I kicked open the wooden door to Suyun's office. She was just setting her bag down, looking like she'd only just arrived herself. She looked up, surprised. She asked me what I wanted so early. I cleared my throat, trying to look as serious as possible. I asked her if she had any more of those diamond body medicine packs. I told her I needed 8 or 10 more. Suyun stared at me like I'd lost my mind. She told me I had a lot of nerve. She explained that a single pack cost over 40,000 yuan. That was a full year's income for a normal family in Qingshan City. The school only gave me that first one because the news had broadcast me saving Guorinyu. I gave her a sheepish smile. I knew the school had deep connections but limited cash. 40,000 yuan was a massive hit to their budget. Suyun sighed and told me not to throw the old pack away. She said it was meant to last a month. I was supposed to reuse it until the water stopped changing color. I shook my head. I told her the truth. I'd absorbed the entire thing in one night. I even told her my diamond body had already reached the 2nd level. She just laughed at me. She didn't believe a word of it. She thought I was joking. She told me that physical cultivation was a slow grind of tempering the body day by day. Even a genius couldn't skip the line. I shrugged. There was no point in arguing if she didn't believe me. I'd have to wait until I reached the 3rd level for the physical changes to be obvious. Suyun's expression softened. She asked if I was short on money. I told her I was beyond broke. She rolled her eyes. She mentioned that the whole school knew I was making 3,000 yuan an hour as a coach. That was more than she made as a professional martial artist. I told her that money was already spoken for. Buying high-energy beast meat wasn't cheap. She knew I was an orphan, so she finally relented. She mentioned the Qingshan Education Bureau had a genius cultivation program. I didn't let her finish. I told her straight out that I was the genius they were looking for. I told her I was a 1 in a million talent who had finally decided to stop playing around. I told her I was destined for Galaxy University. She teased me, asking why I didn't just claim I'd be the top scorer in the entire Donglan district. I didn't blink. I told her that if she gave me 10 S-rank techniques and a few million in funding, I'd sweep the competition. I looked out the window at the blue sky and told her I'd bring glory to the school and make her famous. She told me to stop daydreaming. She made me a deal. If I could rank in the top 100 during the next monthly exam, she'd apply for a bottle of 100 Beast nutrition liquid for me. My heart skipped a beat. That stuff was refined from the blood of 100 different beasts. One bottle cost over 100,000 yuan. It was the ultimate fuel for cultivation. I tried to haggle. I told her I was already invincible against anyone below the high-level awakening stage. I asked if I could just have the liquid now. She smiled, but it was a trap. She said if I was really that strong, maybe the goal should be the top 10 instead. I laughed it off and turned to leave. I wasn't stupid. The top 10 were all at the 8th level of awakening. I walked down the hallway, thinking. The exam was 20 days away. I couldn't wait that long. I needed a way to get more resources now. My 5 techniques were great, but waiting for them to trigger a breakthrough on their own was too slow. I needed a new plan to make money. When I got to class, the atmosphere was electric. Everyone was whispering. I listened in and found out why. Zhang Wenxi had hired a night-level martial artist as his personal coach. In our world, you had awakening, then professional, and then night level. Knights were considered superpowered elites. There were only a handful of them in a city of 10 million people. I saw Ma Hai standing in front of Zhang Wenxi, bowing like a servant. He was acting incredibly humble. Zhang Wenxi acted like a gracious prince, telling Ma Hai to come over this weekend so the coach could give him some pointers. Ma Hai looked like he'd won the lottery. The other students were green with envy. You couldn't just buy a night-level coach with money. You needed serious connections. Goran Yu leaned over and whispered to me. He wondered why Ma Hai was sucking up so hard since his family was already rich. I realized the truth. Ma Hai was desperate for a breakthrough to the 7th level so he could get into a prestigious university. I looked at Ma Hai, and a plan started to form. At lunch, as I walked down the canteen steps, a shadow blocked my path. Ma Hai was standing there with a group of tough-looking students. They surrounded me, looking for a fight. Ma Hai told me we needed to talk. I didn't mind. In fact, I was looking for him too. We walked to a quiet grove behind the training field. It was deserted. Ma Hai turned to me, his eyes full of spite. He told me I had a lot of guts to be seen with Lu Manhwa. Ma Hai cracked his neck, the sound sharp and clear in the quiet grove. He looked at me with a sneer, telling me that if he didn't give me a memory to cherish, I'd never take his words to heart. I kept my hands in my pockets, my expression calm. I told him that after school today, I would resign from my job as Lu Minghua's tutor. A look of relief washed over Ma Hai's face. He mocked me, calling me sensible. I knew what he was thinking. He could finally report back to Zhang Wenxi. If Zhang Wenxi was in a good mood, maybe he'd get more time with that night-level coach. But then, I added one more thing. My voice turned cold. I told him I'd make sure to tell Lu Manhwa exactly why I was quitting. I'd tell her that Zhang Wenxi had ordered Ma Hai to harass me constantly until I couldn't take it anymore. Ma Hai's face froze. In a flash, he lunged forward and grabbed my collar, his eyes burning with rage. He hissed that I was seeking death and that Zhang Wenxi would never let me go if I did that. I let out a short, mocking laugh. I asked him why he wasn't calling him Brother Zhang anymore. I looked him straight in the eye. I pointed out that if Zhang Wenxi hated me, that was one thing. But what about him? As the person who leaked the truth to me, would Zhang Wenxi spare him? Would he still get that elite coaching he wanted so badly? Ma Hai's grip loosened. His face went through a dozen different emotions. I knew his secret now. He was only acting like a loyal dog to Zhang Wenxi because of that night-level coach. Without that, a rich kid like him wouldn't be sucking up to anyone. He looked like he regretted every choice he'd made since yesterday. He probably wanted to slap himself for trying to act cool by revealing the secret. He was trapped. After a long silence, he asked me what I wanted. I smoothed out my collar and smiled. I told him I wanted money. Ma Hai thought for a second. He offered me 10,000 yuan to forget everything he'd said. I shook my head and held up 2 fingers. He got angry, thinking I wanted 20,000. I corrected him. I wanted 200,000. He nearly exploded. He asked me if I knew how much money that was. I just shrugged. I broke it down for him. I earned 3,000 an hour tutoring Lu Manhwa. 2 hours a day was 6,000. With weekends, 200,000 was basically just a month's salary. It wasn't that much to ask. Ma Hai went quiet. He'd forgotten how much I was actually making. I leaned in and told him this would be the best money he ever spent. I explained the logic. He wanted to impress Zhang Wenxi by solving the problem. If I took the money and kept tutoring, Zhang Wenxi would stay annoyed. To keep his perfect student image, he'd have to keep sending Mahai to deal with me. Mahai's importance would skyrocket, and he'd get all the coaching he wanted. I saw the gears turning in his head. He was hesitating. I didn't give him time to think. I turned to walk away, saying I'd just go talk to Lu Mingyue instead. I didn't get 5 steps before he shouted for me to stop. He agreed. He couldn't let that night-level coaching slip away. I gave him my bank account details. He fumbled with his phone, trying one last time to haggle the price down to 20,000. I didn't say a word. I just lifted my foot to leave again. He panicked and stopped me. He agreed to the full amount, but insisted on paying in installments. He was worried I'd take the money and run. We settled on 100,000 up front. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. The notification showed 100,000 yuan had hit my account. I felt a surge of excitement. This was enough to buy 2 high-grade medicinal herb packs. Mahai started to walk away, looking miserable. I called out to him. He turned back, his face full of irritation, complaining that he'd just lost a fortune. My response was a lightning-fast punch to his eye. I grinned at him, showing my teeth. I told him that since I took the money, I had to do the job. I wasn't going to lie for him. If Zhang Wenxi wanted me harassed, then Mahai better start harassing. He lost it. He yelled that I shouldn't think I was actually his match. He claimed he only held back yesterday because of Teacher Su. With the rage of losing his money and getting punched, he charged. Mahai blurred toward me. He swung his right leg in a high, powerful arc aimed straight at my face. It was his signature move, the Earth Crusher. The wind whistled from the force of it. It was stronger than yesterday, but his anger made him predictable. I had time to dodge, but I chose not to. I wanted to test the strength of my second-level Vajra body. I raised my arms in a block. The impact was heavy. It sent me skidding back several feet until my back hit a thick tree trunk. My sleeves were shredded into rags from the shockwave. But when I looked at my arms, there was no blood, no broken skin. Just a faint red mark and a dull ache. It was barely worse than a normal hit from yesterday. My defensive power had reached a whole new level. I wondered how strong the 3rd level would be. I didn't wait. I lunged back at him. We clashed in the middle of the grove. The sound of fists hitting flesh and bone echoed through the trees. Branches shook, and bark flew as we traded blows. I used my swift footwork and 1,000-year killing technique to keep up. Even though he was stronger and faster, my Vajra body allowed me to tank his hits. I was holding my own against a level 6 awakened. As we fought, I felt my combat experience growing. Mahai, on the other hand, was getting frustrated. He couldn't understand why I was so hard to put down when my strength hadn't seemingly increased. We fought for nearly an hour. The grove was a mess. Finally, the noise stopped. Both of us stood there, drenched in sweat, gasping for air like broken bellows. Our stamina was completely tapped out. Technically, Mahai should have had more endurance because of his higher level. But he had spent the whole hour attacking with full force, rage-filled strikes. I had been calculated, using my defense to absorb his energy and counterattacking only when necessary. I knew the more he hit me, the stronger I'd become. The faster I progressed, the more it hurt. It was a strange mix of agony and pure joy. I grabbed a nearby tree to steady myself and focused on evening out my breath. Mahai, I wheezed, looking at him. You win today. But tomorrow, once my wounds heal up, we go again. I wasn't about to let this source of free labor escape. Mahai was bent over, hands on his knees, gasping for air like a dying fish. He looked like he wanted to mock me, but when he finally looked up, he froze. He stared at me, his eyes wide with confusion. Now that the fight was over, he could see my condition clearly. I wasn't the bloody mess I had been yesterday. There were red welts and bruises, sure, but no open gashes. In fact, my injuries didn't look much worse than his own. In a fair ring fight without weapons, I had just fought a level 6 awakened to a literal draw. If I'd had my blade, the outcome would have been terrifying. How? Mahai blurted out, his voice cracking. How did you do it? He was 2 full realms higher than me. To him, my techniques didn't even seem that advanced, yet he couldn't break me. It was like hitting a wall of rubber and iron. I hesitated. If I told him about my Vajra body technique, he might realize I was using him as a human whetstone and quit. I needed him. That 1 hour of fighting had pushed my Vajra body progress up by 4% and sharpened my combat instincts. A few more sessions like this, and I wouldn't just be tanking his hits. I'd be winning. I put on my best cold, arrogant face and sneered. It has to do with Teacher Sue. Even if I explained it, would someone like you even understand? Mahai's face turned a bruised shade of purple. Don't get cocky. Teacher Sue won't be around to babysit you forever. Once her help runs out, I'll show you how painful it really is to fight me barehanded. He actually bought it. He didn't want to believe I could match him on my own merit, so he blamed external forces from Su Yun. It was the perfect cover. Same time, same place tomorrow, Mahai growled, trying to regain some dignity. If you don't show up, you can forget about the rest of the money. I'll be here, I grumbled, acting like I was annoyed. Inside, I was laughing. Not only was I getting stronger, but I was getting paid for it. It was a dream setup. I knew eventually I'd be able to grind him into the dirt, and he'd realize he'd been played. But until then, I was going to milk this for every drop it was worth. I checked my phone. I still had time before class, so I headed towards Suyun's office. My injuries weren't life-threatening, but they'd take days to heal naturally. If I could freeload another round of her healing, I'd be back at 100% by tonight. As I walked, I opened a shopping app called Martial Arts Resources. It was run by the Martial Arts Alliance and the government. If it existed, they sold it. I searched for the medicinal soak required for the Vajra body. 45,000 credits per pack. My heart skipped a beat. That was a year's salary for a normal person in Qingshan City. Hard body techniques were notoriously expensive, second only to breathing methods. I winced and ordered 2 packs. The 100,000 I'd just extorted from Mahai vanished, leaving me with only 10,000 in change. Normally, 2 packs would last a practitioner 2 months. For me, they'd be gone in 2 nights. My body's absorption rate was terrifying. Mahai still owes me another 10,000, I muttered to myself. But that's only enough for a few more days. I'm still broke. Maybe Zhang Wenxi will send more rich kids to teach me a lesson so I can shake them down too. I reached Suyun's office. When she saw my shredded uniform and bruised skin, her eyebrows shot up. Fighting again? She asked, her eyes scanning my injuries. It was a sparring match, Teacher Sue, I said, standing tall and sounding as noble as possible. I'm working tirelessly to improve my combat skills for the college entrance exams. I want to bring glory to the school, and to you. She gave me a skeptical look, seeing right through my flattery. But she didn't argue. She closed her slender fingers, gathered her force, and began the treatment. I knew she was only helping because she felt a bit guilty about our earlier bet, and maybe a little sorry for my background as an orphan. I didn't mind. I'd take every advantage I could get. That night, back at my apartment in the old district, the doorbell rang. The delivery from the government site was incredibly fast. I took the package into the bathroom, filled the tub, and dumped the medicine in. I climbed in and fell into a deep, restorative sleep. When I woke up at dawn, the water was crystal clear. Every drop of medicinal essence had been sucked into my pores. I pinched my skin. It felt denser, tougher. I pulled up my system interface. Vajra body, level 2. Progress, 50%. Before the bath, I was at 17%. A 33% jump in one night. It was slower than the jump from level 1 to level 2, but that was expected. The higher the level, the harder the climb. I had 1 pack left. That would get me to 80% tonight. But after that, I was out of money. Mahai wouldn't be coughing up the rest of the cash anytime soon. I stood up from the tub, my body feeling long and powerful. Even without the medicine, my daily training would give me about 2% progress a day. Reaching level 3 was only a matter of time. I grinned, thinking about the next time I'd see Mahai. I wondered what kind of face he'd make when he realized his punching bag had turned into solid steel. I started to settle into my new life. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. My days fell into a steady rhythm: home, school, and the Jidao Martial Arts Hall. Since my martial arts practiced themselves automatically, I wasn't actually busy, but I didn't slack off. I spent my free time buried in martial arts theory to sharpen my understanding. On weekends, I'd wander through antique shops with Guo Rinyu, hoping to find another hidden manual, but no luck. My system stayed silent. Time slipped by, and my strength climbed steadily. I was pushing past the high stages of awakening level 4, closing in on level 5. In this world, cultivation is usually a slow grind. People spend years climbing a single rank. I was only moving this fast because my savage bull strength worked day and night without rest, and because I was getting high-quality beast meat from Manhwa every day. But the biggest change wasn't just my raw power. It was my combat ability. Every time I fought Manhwa, my moves got meaner and my timing got tighter. The bruises on my body started to disappear. Eventually, the tables turned. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was dominating him. One afternoon, deep in the woods behind the school training grounds, the usual dull thuds of a beating rang out. But today, the rhythm was faster. It ended abruptly with a sharp cry of pain. Manhwa lay on the ground, face swollen and bleeding, looking utterly miserable. I stood over him, back straight as a spear, without a single scratch on me. This isn't just Teacher Sue helping you, Manhwa stammered, his voice trembling as he looked up at me. You've mastered a powerful body-hardening technique. He wasn't stupid. Su-Yun could protect me from being bullied, but she couldn't give me the power to beat him into the dirt like this. You've got it wrong, Manhwa, I said, trying to play it cool. This is just the power of a professional martial artist's guidance. It's that strong. Do you think I'm an idiot? He spat, though he shut his mouth the moment I looked down at him with cold eyes. He knew I didn't just have high defense. I had taken him down in record time. It doesn't matter what you think, I said, finally dropping the act. I have a powerful body-refining art and top-tier combat skills. So what? You want to stop? Do you really want to give up those lessons from a night-level martial artist? Manhwa stayed silent. I turned to leave, then paused and looked back with a grin. Right, almost forgot. You haven't transferred today's payment. You're my sparring partner, after all. Actually, since you beat me up today, you owe me a little extra. Manhwa's teeth nearly cracked from clenching them so hard. I had literally just admitted he was my sparring partner, and yet he still had to pay me for the privilege of getting his teeth kicked in. It was a total scam. Don't worry, I laughed. Once I leave the woods, I'll bruise myself up a bit so you can report back to Zhang Wenxi. He sullenly pulled out his phone and sent the money. I walked away satisfied, leaving him staring at my back with a mix of fury and genuine terror. He couldn't understand how I'd become a monster in such a short time. By Friday evening, I was back at the martial arts hall. The sunset poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the private training room, painting everything in a soft orange glow. But the atmosphere inside was anything but soft. Two blades blurred through the air, trailing fluorescent light and clashing with the sound of rolling thunder. Manhwa and I were locked in a stalemate, both using Thunderbolt Slash. She stepped aside, narrowly dodging a strike that almost took a lock of her hair. She stared at me, her eyes filled with disbelief. 2 weeks ago, I was a total novice. My movements had been stiff and green. Now, I was holding my own against her. Even though my Thunderbolt Slash was at a higher realm, she had the reflexes and senses of a level 9 awakened. She should have been able to crush me. The fact that I was keeping up was terrifying. Our blades met in a shower of sparks. For a split second, her focus wavered. I saw the opening. I lunged forward, my feet light as air. I was using Gale Step, only a basic level 1 movement technique, but I'd pushed it to the 3rd realm, Mastery. I covered 10 meters in the blink of an eye. I swung my blade down, the fluorescent edge cutting the air. Manhwa raised her sword to block, but she was off balance. My Thunderbolt Slash was stronger in a head-on collision. I pressed the advantage, strike after strike, forcing her back. For the first time in all our sessions, I actually had a chance to win. My heart raced with excitement, but I instantly suppressed it. I forced my mind to stay cold and dark. In a fight, distraction is death. Boom, boom, boom. Thunder erupted from my limbs as I poured everything into my strikes. The light from my blade was like a falling waterfall, drowning her out. But Manhwa didn't panic. She was a veteran. She threw her entire soul into the defense, and slowly, her movements began to change. Her rhythm smoothed out. The thunder coming from her own body grew deeper, louder, more resonant. With a sudden roar of sound, she broke through. Her Thunderbolt Slash had finally evolved to the 2nd realm, Proficient. The impact was massive. The sheer force of her breakthrough sent my sword flying out of my hand. Oh no, Lu Minghua gasped. In that moment of breakthrough, she had lost control of her strength. She tried to pull back, but her blade was already whistling toward my chest. The blade whistled through the air, aimed straight for my arm. I didn't panic. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I opened my right hand and reached out to meet the cold steel. Don't, Lu Minghua screamed. She knew the stakes. If that blade hit my arm, I'd walk away with a broken bone. But my fingers? Even an unsharpened training blade backed by the power of a breakthrough-level thunderbolt slash would shear them right off. Reattaching fingers was a nightmare, even with modern medicine. She thought I'd lost my mind in the heat of the moment. Then, the blade connected. A flash of golden light flickered across my palm. Clang. The sound was deafening, like a hammer striking an anvil. Sparks flew into the air. The sheer momentum of the strike forced me into a half-crouch, my legs buckling under the weight of her newfound power. But my hand was fine. I stood up and shook out my wrist, a small smile playing on my lips. You finally broke through, Lu Minghua. Congratulations. She didn't congratulate me back. She just stared at my hand, her eyes wide with shock. How did you do that? Just a bit of physical cultivation, I said, keeping it simple. I focused my mind, and a thin, translucent golden film shimmered over my palm. This was the power of the third level of my Vajra body. I could now actively harden parts of my body, making them as tough as diamond for a brief moment. At my current level, I could only cover an area about the size of my palm for 1 second, but in a fight, 1 second is everything. Lu Minghua didn't recognize the technique. Vajra body was notoriously difficult to learn, so most people stayed far away from it. But she wasn't stupid. She knew that blocking her strike meant my mastery of physical cultivation was incredibly high. Between your micro-level thunderbolt slash and this defense, she mused, her respect for me clearly growing. You actually have a shot at the top 10 universities in the Federation. I shook my head. Elite schools require high-level awakening. I'm still a long way off. In this world, reaching the 7th stage of awakening was the true threshold. At that level, power surged through the body like a mountain spring. Even with my skills, I wasn't sure I could beat a 7th stage fighter yet. Combat skill isn't the only metric for the exams, she countered. These 2 techniques will give you a massive boost. We talked for a while longer. Over the past few weeks, the tension between us had melted away. We were almost like friends. Lin Yuan, she said, her voice turning serious. My thunderbolt slash has reached the proficient stage. I won't see another major breakthrough before the exams. From now on, I need to focus on becoming a true martial artist. Our training sessions, they have to end. I nodded. I'd expected this, but it still stung. A job paying 3,000 credits an hour was a rare find. She looked over at the middle-aged man standing by the edge of the field. Uncle Yang, bring 30,000 credits and a vial of 100 Beast nutrient solution. A few minutes later, the man returned. He handed me a stack of cash and a glass tube filled with a dark, bubbling red liquid. This is yours, Lu Minghua said. I hesitated. I needed the money, but I wasn't looking for charity. The 30,000 is a bonus for helping me break my bottleneck so quickly, she explained, sensing my hesitation. The nutrient solution is an apology. I lost control of my strength and could have seriously hurt you. My mistake doesn't go away just because you were strong enough to block it. I took the items and thanked her. One more thing, she added. If you don't have anything urgent this weekend, stay inside. Uncle Yang, drive him all the way to his front door. Did something happen? I asked, my brow furrowing. A spy escaped into Qingshan City, she replied. Zhao Weiping. You might have seen it on the news. The police are launching a massive manhunt this weekend. He's a formal martial artist. If you cross paths with him, it's over. I agreed. A rogue martial artist in a city of 10 million people was like a ticking time bomb. If they don't catch him by the end of the weekend, she continued, the police might recruit top high school students to help with the search. Students? Isn't that too dangerous? I asked. Zhao Weiping is badly wounded and exhausted, she said. He's not at full strength. Plus, the reward for his capture is huge. But don't get your hopes up. Our school only has 10 slots for the mission, and they'll go to the 8th and 9th stage students. I shrugged it off. There were nearly 20 students in the senior class stronger than me on paper. I didn't stand a chance of being picked. By 9 p.m., I was back in my living room, sitting cross-legged on the sofa. I closed my eyes, feeling the energy in my body. Thanks to all the beast meat I'd been eating, I'd reached the peak of the 4th stage of awakening. I looked at the vial on the coffee table. One vial of 100 beast nutrient solution cost 180,000 credits on the open market. The energy inside was immense. This should be enough to push me to the 5th stage, I whispered. For most, the jump from 4 to 5 was just another step. For me, it was a transformation. Below the 5th stage, you only train the skin, bone, and muscle. But the 5th stage? That's when the refinement reaches the internal organs. That's when the real power begins. Once I hit the 5th stage, everything would change. At that level, I could unleash techniques like the 1,000-year slaughter or my thunderbolt slash without worrying about the physical backlash. Right now, against a 7th stage opponent, I could only hope for a draw. But with this breakthrough, the game would be different. I looked at the vial of 100 beast nutrient solution, popped the cap, and drank it all in one gulp. Immediately, the system's mechanical voice echoed in my head. My Mangyo strength technique sensed the massive surge of energy and went into a frenzy. Its cultivation speed skyrocketed by 1850%, nearly 20 times faster than usual. I could feel it working. A numbing sensation crawled over my skin, far more intense than anything I'd felt eating beast meat. You really do get what you pay for. The system notified me that the energy would last 48 hours. I was stunned. For a high-level student, a single vial usually lasted 10 days. But my techniques were so efficient at absorbing energy that they were tearing through the supply. Since I didn't need to manually practice, I spent the rest of the evening watching videos of high-level martial arts duels, letting the system do the heavy lifting. Saturday morning came. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. sharp, driven by my internal clock. Remembering Lu Mingyue's warning, I stayed inside. I spent the day reviewing my academic subjects and taking online martial arts theory classes. During my breaks, I checked the news for updates on the spy, Zhao Weiping. He was a spy from a planet called Tianwu. 1,000 years ago, our worlds fought a brutal war that left hundreds of millions dead. The grudge ran deep. If he got caught, his life was essentially over. I shook my head, pushed the thoughts aside, and got back to my studies. By Saturday night, after 24 hours of constant refinement, the system chimed again. My Mangyo strength had reached a breakthrough. I was officially at the 5th stage of awakening. My bones let out a series of crisp pops, and a wave of raw power surged through me. My senses felt sharper than ever. Then, another notification followed. My Mangyo strength had broken through its barrier, reaching the micro level. The absorption efficiency increased again, cutting the remaining energy duration down to 15 hours. The numbing sensation intensified, reaching deep into places I hadn't felt before. Reaching the micro level for a breathing technique wasn't just about speed, it was about precision. It refined my body at a granular level, making my movements more harmonious and unified. By noon on Sunday, the sensation faded. The vial was empty. I checked my status and realized I hadn't just reached the 5th stage. I was already at the peak of it. System, I whispered, calling up the panel. My Mangyo strength was at the micro level, 2% progress. My Gale steps were at mastery, 31%. Thunderbolt slash was at micro level, 35%. The 1,000-year slaughter was at proficient, 11%. And my golden body technique was at the 3rd layer, 20%. I stared at the translucent screen, planning my next move. Resources were tight. I had about 30,000 credits in the bank and one more vial of nutrient solution promised by Su Yun. The extra money from tutoring Lu Mingyue was likely gone since that job was over. I had to choose where to invest. Mangyo's strength improved everything. Strength, speed, stamina. But even if I poured everything into it, I wouldn't reach the high-level stages before the college entrance exams. It's better to sell the nutrient solution, I decided. On the second-hand market, a vial was worth 160,000 credits. With that plus my savings, I could buy 4 medicinal packs for my golden body technique. That would be enough to push it to the 4th layer before the exams. With a defense that's strong, A top 10 university wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a target. By evening, the sky turned a bruised purple. The first spring rain was about to hit Qingshan City. I ordered some food and turned on the news. Every channel was showing Zhao Weiping's face, warning people to stay indoors. The police still hadn't found him. During dinner, my phone buzzed. Suyun had posted a massive update in the class group chat. The school was sending teachers to help with the manhunt. For students below the 7th stage, classes were moving online. But there was one more thing. The selection trial Lu Minghua mentioned. 10 students would be chosen to join the search parties alongside veteran teachers and police. It wasn't going to be a standard arena fight. Instead, we had to compete to capture a device called a spy tracker. It was a strange format, but it meant raw power wasn't the only factor. The trial was set for Monday morning at the school. Participation was voluntary because of the danger. My phone buzzed again. It was time to decide if I was going to step into the light. The class group chat was exploding. Everyone was obsessed with the selection trial. Tang Xiaowan posted first. The key to this trial isn't just grabbing the tracker, she wrote. It's keeping it. Whoever has it will be a target for everyone else. Only the Stage 9 students have a real shot. If a Stage 8 student gets cornered, they're finished. Zhou He chimed in. I don't get what the police are thinking. If they want to catch a spy, shouldn't they just send the strongest people? Zhang Wenxi replied immediately. Combat power isn't the only factor, Zhou He. That spy is heavily injured, but a dying tiger is still a tiger. Never underestimate a professional martial artist. If he gets desperate, he could easily take a few Stage 9 students down with him. The police want to see who's sharp and alert, not just who hits the hardest. Our class monitor, Mahai, is amazing, someone added. His analysis is spot on. He'll definitely grab one of those trackers. Wang Dong sent a laughing emoji. Nobody understands being alert better than me. Consider one of those trackers mine. You're at Stage 3, Li Shangyun, Zhou He shot back. Are you going there just to be a snack for the spy? I pulled my eyes away from the screen. My fingers tapped rhythmically on the desk. I had made up my mind. I was going to the trial. Winning a tracker would be great, but it wasn't my only goal. I wanted to test my current strength. More importantly, I wanted to have a little chat with Zhang Wenxi. Sitting back and taking hits wasn't my style. Based on his messages, he was definitely participating. If I played my cards right, I could probably squeeze some money out of him. I smiled to myself. Zhang Wenxi still didn't know that my deal to stop tutoring Lu Minghua was already done. He thought he still had leverage. Rain started falling in the middle of the night. It was a steady, rhythmic drizzle that didn't let up until dawn. Monday morning at Qingshan First High was electric. The seniors arrived earlier than usual, their voices loud and excited as they discussed the trial. But not everyone was in a good mood. Mahai looked like he was about to explode. He was standing in front of Zhang Wenxi, his head bowed, his voice low and submissive. Class monitor, I'll do my best. Haven't I been keeping Lin Yuan bruised and battered for you? It was a lie, of course. I had been faking those injuries to give Mahai something to report back. Zhang Wenxi waved him off with a look of pure disgust. Stop talking. A few red marks on his skin don't mean anything. It's been over 2 weeks, and you still haven't dealt with him? He's a Stage 4 weakling. Don't think I don't know you're slacking off. Mahai opened his mouth, but the words died in his throat. He couldn't tell the truth. Lately, he couldn't even touch me. I didn't know what kind of body-hardening technique I was practicing, but my skin had become like iron. Mahai's punches didn't even leave a mark. Even when he used his strongest Earth-rank move, the mountain-splitting palm, he barely scratched me. Meanwhile, I had been using a particularly nasty close-quarters style that left him covered in real bruises. He'd already spent tens of thousands of credits on his own medical bills. Monitor, please, Mahai begged. Ask Uncle Lee to coach me one more time. I'm right on the edge of reaching Stage 7. Once I break through, I'll cripple Lin Yuan so badly, he won't even make it to the exams. Uncle Lee was a night-level martial artist who worked for Zhang Wenxi's family. Zhang Wenxi sneered and turned his back. You're still trying to play me? Forget it. I'll handle Lin Yuan myself. Besides, this class only needs one high-stage student to represent us. Teacher Su Yun doesn't need a second student taking her attention. Mahai's face went pale. His chance at extra coaching was gone. He watched Zhang Wenxi walk away, his eyes filling with resentment. He had spent so much time sucking up to him, and all it took was one perceived failure for Zhang Wenxi to toss him aside like trash. "You'll regret this, Zhang Wenxi," Mahai hissed under his breath. He knew he wasn't strong enough to challenge Zhang Wenxi directly, but he knew someone who was. He was certain now that I wasn't just a stage 4 student. Nobody improves that fast in 2 weeks. It was impossible. He figured I was hiding my true strength, playing the pig to eat the tiger. It happened every year. Some genius hides their power just to explode as a dark horse during the exams and shock the world. Mahai realized I was doing exactly that. A cold smile spread across his face as a plan started to form. By 8 in the morning, the entire senior class was gathered at the training grounds. A young man in his 20s with a buzz cut stood on the stage. He was from the police department. He didn't waste time with a long speech. The hunt for Zhao Weiping was too urgent. He quickly went over the rules and then dropped the news we were all waiting for. Anyone who captures the spy, Zhao Weiping, dead or alive, will receive a reward of 1 million credits, the officer announced. The crowd erupted. Most of the kids at Qingshan were from wealthy families, but that was their parents' money. 1 million credits of their own was a fortune. My heart raced. With 1 million credits, I could easily reach the high stages of awakening before the exams. The officer raised his hand for silence. Zhao Weiping is a traitor to the Federation. Therefore, the Donglin District Police Headquarters has announced a special prize. Any high school senior who brings him to justice will be granted a spot in the Shanghai Genius Training Camp. The silence that followed was deafening, followed by a literal explosion of noise. My heart skipped a beat. 1,000 years ago, the world had united into a single federation of 99 districts. The Shanghai Training Camp was the premier elite facility for our district. It was the best of the best. The lowest-ranked students there still got into the top 10 universities. Half of them made it into Galaxy University. Even professional martial artists weren't guaranteed a spot there. "Sign me up," someone screamed. "I'm taking that spy's head and going to Galaxy University," another yelled. I stayed quiet, watching the officer closely. I was thinking about his wording. Bring him to justice. Did that mean catching him alone, or just assisting the police? For someone like Lu Mingyue, who had deep family connections, assisting would probably be enough to get into the camp. But for a kid like me with no background, I'd likely have to take down a professional martial artist by myself. I took a deep breath and forced my heart to slow down. I would do my best, but I wouldn't let greed get me killed. The officer pressed his hands down again, signaling for the trial to begin. The call for participants echoed across the field. Anyone wanting to enter the selection trial had to head to the west side of the stands to register. The crowd surged toward the registration desk like a school of fish. Because of the Shanghai training camp, even the students who previously didn't care were now desperate for a spot. Nearly 1,000 people signed up, all competing for just 10 tracking devices. The sheer number of participants made the outcome unpredictable. After all, even a student at the 9th stage of awakening couldn't survive 100 people ganging up on them at once. 10 minutes later, I pushed my way out of the crowd after finishing my registration. "Wait a second," a voice called out behind me. I turned around and saw Mahai striding toward me. My eyes lit up. This was perfect timing. "Don't waste my time," I said before he could even open his mouth. "Transfer today's payment first." I knew my gig as Lu Mingyue's instructor wouldn't stay a secret forever. Even if she didn't say anything, people would notice the moment she stopped giving me rides. I had to milk Mahai for every cent while he was still in the dark. A small mosquito is still meat, and according to our deal, he owed me 2,500 yuan a day, which wasn't pocket change. Mahai let out a cold, mocking laugh. "Forget about the money. I found a new way forward. I don't need to suck up to Zhang Wenxi anymore. I don't care what you tell Lu Mingyue. You aren't getting another penny from me." He was clearly trying to hide the fact that his relationship with Zhang Wenxi had collapsed. He wanted to trick me into dealing with Zhang Wenxi for him without me knowing the truth. How can a man have so little integrity? I muttered, curling my lip. I didn't argue. I just turned and started scanning the crowd for Zhang Wenxi. Compared to the scraps Mahai offered, Zhang Wenxi was the real prize. If I played my cards right, I could make a small fortune off him instead. "Wait, hold on," Mahai shouted, looking panicked. This wasn't how he expected me to react. He hadn't even started his plan and I was already walking away. He rushed forward and blocked my path, his face full of forced confidence. "I know how strong you really are," he said firmly. I froze, my expression turning serious. How could he know I had reached the 5th stage of awakening? Only a professional martial artist should be able to sense someone else's true cultivation level. But then I realized I had overthought it. "You can fool the others, but you can't fool me," Mahai sneered, seeing my reaction. "We fought over a dozen times. Your strength is at least at the 7th stage of awakening. You've been hiding it to make a big splash at the college entrance exams, haven't you? Probably trying to impress Teacher Sue. Your methods are much smarter than Zhang Wenxi's." I almost laughed. This guy had quite the imagination. I didn't bother correcting him. Instead, I let out a cold snort and crossed my arms. "So what? What does that have to do with you?" Mahai's face darkened. "I'm just here to give you a friendly warning. Yesterday, Zhang Wenxi told me to find someone to cut the security cameras in Building 1. It definitely has something to do with this selection trial. Whether you go there or not is up to you. I don't care." I looked at him and smirked. "Let me guess. You and Zhang Wenxi had a falling out. You're too scared to face him yourself, so you want to use me as your weapon." Mahai's expression shifted instantly. He hadn't expected me to see through him so easily. "So what if I am?" he barked, dropping the act. He gritted his teeth. "You can't afford to refuse. This is the perfect chance to take him down." I stared at him for a long moment, then let out a cold laugh. "You're right. I can't refuse. But don't think you can just sit back and watch the show for free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I think I'll go tell Zhang Wenxi exactly what you just told me. Then I can watch the two of you fight like dogs." Actually, I shook my head and smiled. "You're no match for him. He'll just crush you." You have no proof." Mahai stammered, a flash of fear in his eyes. He might have broken ties with Zhang Wenxi, but he was still terrified of him. In terms of family background and raw power, Zhang Wenxi could destroy him. I pulled out my phone and gave him a bright smile. "Mahai, we're close partners, aren't we? Those transfer records you sent me are all the proof I need. Why wouldn't Zhang Wenxi believe me?" Mahai's face turned pale. Zhang Wenxi already suspected him of playing games. If he saw those payment records, Mahai would never be able to explain it away. "What do you want?" he asked after a long, hateful silence. This was exactly like what happened 2 weeks ago. I had him by the throat again. "I'm an honest man," I said, my smile widening. "Just pay me the balance you owe me." Mahai looked like he wanted to scream. I wasn't even tutoring him anymore, and I was still demanding payment. "Once the money hits my account," I continued calmly, "I'll go deal with Zhang Wenxi. And I'll keep my mouth shut about our little chat." Mahai hesitated. "Go deal with him first. Then I'll pay." I shook my head. "No. Transfer it now. You have a history of backing out on deals. I don't trust you." "Fine. You win," Mahai hissed. He glared at me for a few seconds, realized I wasn't budging, and pulled out his phone. The total was 60-some thousand yuan, including some change. I leaned over and tapped his screen. "That's too complicated with all those small numbers. Let's just round it off. Just send me 70,000. Mahai snapped his head toward me, his eyes bulging with rage. I could tell he had never heard of rounding off by adding several thousand yuan. "Don't worry," I said, trying to soothe him. "As a bonus, I'll give Zhang Wenxi 2 black eyes. I'll make sure he loses face in front of everyone. It'll be worth the extra cash." Mahai paused. The image of Zhang Wenxi walking around with 2 black eyes seemed to satisfy him. "Fine." The transfer went through a few seconds later. "Any other requests for Zhang Wenxi?" I asked cheerfully. As long as Mahai's heart skipped a beat. He didn't say a word. He turned around and practically sprinted out of the training grounds, terrified that I'd find another way to trick him out of more money. I watched him run and realized I was starting to feel a bit like a villain. It was a good feeling. At 9 o'clock sharp, a loud bell rang out across the school, signaling the start of the selection trial. The students surged forward like a tidal wave. Everyone used their best movement techniques to race toward the nearest tracking devices. There were 10 of them, placed around the edges of the training field. In an instant, several students at the 9th stage of awakening reached the devices first. They grabbed them and immediately retreated, trying to avoid getting surrounded. I watched from the sidelines and shook my head. It was just as I expected. This wasn't a duel, it was a brawl. Even if I grabbed a device now, I'd just become a target for everyone else. The competition lasted 2 hours. I needed to wait for the final moments to make my move. But I knew my chances were slim. As the clock ticked down, the people holding the devices would only get stronger. Luckily, the tracking device wasn't my main goal today. My main goal was Zhang Wenxi. He was going to learn that targeting me came with a very high price. A cold light flashed in my eyes. I drew my silver blood battle blade and started walking toward Building 1. There were no rules against weapons in this trial. After all, the ultimate goal was to catch a spy. Zhao Weiping wasn't the type of guy to care about a fair fight. In this world, if you were strong enough to drive a mecha onto the field, the police department wouldn't stop you. They'd stand up and applaud. 5 minutes later, I reached Building 1. It was one of the oldest teaching buildings at Qingshan First High, mostly abandoned now and used to store old desks and broken chairs. I stepped through the entrance and immediately activated my gale steps. I kept my movements light, my footsteps becoming almost silent. I had 2 goals. First, I wanted to see exactly what Zhang Wenxi was up to. Second, I had to be careful. Ma Hai was the one who told me about this spot, and there was a small chance he and Zhang Wenxi were setting a trap for me. I couldn't afford to be careless. I moved through the building like a ghost. The first floor was empty. The second floor was the same. But as I reached the 3rd floor landing, I heard the faint sound of footsteps coming from a classroom just down the hall. My heart skipped a beat. Zhang Wenxi. None of the 10 tracking devices were supposed to be here, so no other students should have been lurking around. I gripped my silver blood battle blade between my teeth to keep my hands free and dropped to the floor. I crawled forward on my stomach, inching along for about 10 meters until I could see through a side window into the classroom. It was him. But my eyes immediately locked onto what he was holding. It was a wooden rack containing 3 glass vials. Inside the vials, a dark red liquid bubbled and swirled. I knew exactly what that was. I'd taken one recently to reach the 5th stage of awakening. It was 100 Beast Nutrient Solution. My blood started to boil. If I could get my hands on those 3 vials, I'd have enough energy to break through to the 6th stage. Part of me wanted to rush in and take them right then, but I forced myself to stay calm. Ma Hai might have cut the security cameras, but a robbery like that would leave tracks. With Zhang Wenxi's family background, the police would hunt me down. The risk was too high. I pushed the greed aside and kept watching. Zhang Wenxi was pacing back and forth, constantly checking his phone. He looked anxious. He was waiting for someone. I started connecting the dots. Ma Hai cuts the cameras. Zhang Wenxi shows up with 3 expensive nutrient solutions. He's waiting in a secluded spot. It hit me like a bolt of lightning. He was going to trade those vials for a tracking device. It made perfect sense. His family was rich enough to hire night-level warriors, so they could easily help him hunt down the spy later. The problem was getting the device in the first place. Zhang Wenxi was only at the 7th stage of awakening. He couldn't hold on to a device in a massive brawl. The only way for him to win was to buy one at the very last second when the fight was already over. My heart started racing. It was just a theory, but I was willing to bet on it. My chances of winning a device through the main brawl were slim anyway. I couldn't stay in the hallway. If his trade partner showed up, I'd be spotted instantly. I crawled backward, slipped out of the building, and found a better vantage point. A large tree growing right outside the classroom window. The spring leaves were thick enough to hide me. I climbed up and perched on a branch, watching Zhang Wenxi through the foliage. I felt like a predator watching its prey. Meanwhile, back in the school's monitoring room, the school leaders were watching the chaos on the screens with a young, short-haired officer from the police department. "What's going on with the cameras in Building 1? The dean asked, pointing at a cluster of black screens. "Signal issues, sir," a staff member replied. "The line might be cut." The dean turned to the officer. "Officer Zhou, should we pause the trial until the cameras are fixed?" "No need," Zhou said, scanning the other monitors. "All 10 tracking devices are still within view of the other cameras. We can't waste time. Catching Zhao Weiping is the priority. A rogue professional warrior is too dangerous to leave on the loose." Out on the main field, the battle was reaching a fever pitch. Students were screaming and clashing everywhere. The ones holding the devices were being swarmed, even the 9th stage students. Time ticked by. The devices changed hands over and over again. By 10:50 a.m., with only 10 minutes left, the chaos began to settle. Most students were exhausted, their energy spent. Only a few devices were still being fought over. The rest were firmly held by the strongest elites. Inside the classroom, Zhang Wenxi checked his watch again. He was sweating. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. He looked at the screen and let out a long, shaky breath of relief. A moment later, a tall figure walked into the room. I recognized him immediately. Wei Bohu. He was at the 9th stage of awakening and had mastered a B-rank fist technique. He was easily in the top 3 of our grade. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Trading tracking devices wasn't exactly legal, and I wanted evidence. Did you get it? Zhang Wenxi asked, stepping toward him eagerly. Where's my stuff? Wei Bohu pulled out a small, square black box, the tracking device. Right here, all 3, Zhang Wenxi said, showing him the rack of vials, but keeping them out of reach. Wei Bohu sneered. What, you planning to stiff me? I'll give them to you after the trial ends, Zhang Wenxi said, tucking the vials into his pocket. If I give them to you now, you could just take them and snatch the device back. I'm not stupid. Wei Bohu let out a cold laugh. Fine. You wouldn't dare lie to me anyway. He turned and walked out of the classroom. Zhang Wenxi stayed behind, clutching the device with a smug look on his face. He figured he was safe here until the clock ran out. He didn't want to risk going back outside and getting jumped. He thought he was the clever one. He didn't realize the real predator was already at the window. I put my phone away. My eyes locked onto the back of his head. I took a deep breath, coiled my muscles, and lunged. I kicked off the branch with enough force to shatter the bark. I flew through the air like an arrow, crashing through the classroom window in a shower of glass. Before I even hit the floor, I pulled my hand back and threw a punch. It was the bone-crushing killing fist, the most lethal strike I knew. My fist roared through the air, trailing a wake of shattered glass like a storm of blades. My fist hurtled toward Zhang Wenxi's face. He looked stunned, but he was a high-level awakened for a reason. His reaction was instant. He thrust a palm forward, his hand turning a deep, angry red as veins bulged with raw power. He was clearly using a high-level palm technique. Our strike collided with a deafening bang. A shockwave rippled outward, shattering the remaining glass fragments in the air and sending them flying like shrapnel. Zhang Wenxi's body shuddered violently. He was thrown back, his spine slamming into the classroom wall with a heavy thud that knocked dust from the ceiling. I felt a massive surge of counterforce hit me. I was tossed backward through the air, but I tightened my core, performed a mid-air backflip to bleed off the momentum, and landed firmly on the window ledge. I looked down at him from my perch. Even with the advantage of a surprise drop attack and my strongest move, I'd only managed a slight edge over his hurried defense. A high-level Awaken's power really was like a deep well. I narrowed my eyes and decided to play with his head a bit. Zhang Wenxi, I said, my voice dropping into a cold, authoritative tone. You've been caught red-handed purchasing illegal tracking devices. Surrender now. You have the right to remain silent, but everything you say will be used against you. Zhang Wenxi flinched, visibly shaken for a second. But then he paused. He looked at me, his eyes squinting as if trying to place a familiar face. When he finally recognized me, his fear vanished, replaced by an explosion of rage. Lin Yuan, he roared. His eyes practically glowed with fury. Oh, not shaking anymore. I let out a mocking laugh. Hand over the device, and I might let you walk. Zhang Wenxi sneered. A level 4 awakened talking big. You've got a death wish. Is that a no? I stepped off the ledge, my feet moving in the rhythm of the gale steps. I blurred toward him, the air whistling past my ears. By the way, I'm level 5 now. In a heartbeat, I was in his space. I pressed my fingers together, thrusting my hand toward his throat like a piercing sword. It was the hidden snake strike. Level 5? That's your big secret. Zhang Wenxi mocked, though his movements stayed sharp. Impressive. I was doing that back in my first year of high school. He swung a heavy hand blade at my wrist, aiming to break my arm. His strike was fast, like a clap of thunder. But as his hand was about to connect, my arm bent at a gruesome, impossible angle, just like a twisting snake. I bypassed his guard and kept driving my fingers toward his windpipe. My mastery of the ancient killing art made these movements second nature now. Zhang Wenxi's face paled. He didn't panic, though. He used his combat experience to step forward heavily, shifting his weight to force my strike off center. My fingers missed his throat but tore through his shirt and sank into his shoulder. At the same time, his hand blade curled into a fist and hammered into my chest. A dull tear and a heavy thud rang out simultaneously. Blood seeped from the holes I'd poked in his shoulder, but his punch sent me flying across the room. I smashed into a heavy stone desk, snapping the wooden top and warping the metal frame beneath it. I stood up immediately, shaking it off like it was nothing. Since my Vajra body had reached the 3rd level, my physical defense was on a different plane. That punch stung, but that was it. I didn't even have to look to know my chest was barely red. What kind of martial art is that? I muttered, looking at the blood on my fingertips. When my fingers had pierced his skin, his muscles had suddenly turned hard as steel, stopping me from digging deeper. I'd expected that strike to take his arm out of the fight entirely. Lin Yuan, I'm going to break every single one of your fingers. Zhang Wenxi hissed. The pain in his shoulder was clearly getting to him. He lunged at me like a cornered tiger, kicking up a gale of wind. I wiped the blood off my hand and met him head-on. The classroom turned into a war zone. Desks were pulverized into splinters. Windows exploded. On the surface, I was losing. My ancient killing art was only at the practiced level, and going up against a level 7 awakened like Zhang Wenxi was a massive drain. But I had the Vajra body. I fought dirty, trading blow for blow, knowing I could take a hit far better than he could. Let's see how much more you can take. Zhang Wenxi screamed, throwing a vicious elbow toward my head. It was the iron elbow spear, a C-rank technique. The air shrieked as it approached. I didn't dodge. I didn't even blink. I aimed a punch straight for his stomach. My arm made a sharp cracking sound, like a whip snapping or a bowstring releasing. My fist accelerated instantly, leaving a trail of afterimages. This was the second form of the ancient killing art, the aeroflight punch. It was built for one thing, pure, blinding speed. My fist buried itself in his gut, making his face turn purple. A split second later, his elbow slammed into my chest. A golden flash flickered across my skin. The sound was like metal hitting metal. I was blown back to the other side of the classroom, landing in a cloud of dust. I nipped back up with a quick kip up. The temporary golden body state had absorbed most of the impact. I brushed the dust off my shirt and sighed. I wanted to practice with you a bit longer, I said, looking at the clock. But I'm running out of time. I need to finish this. Talk is cheap. Zhang Wenxi spat, though he looked worried now. He realized that in this room, no one else could stand against me. I'd been hiding my strength far too well. I didn't bother explaining. I reached behind my back and drew the silver blood battle saber. I charged, the tip of the blade scraping the floor and kicking up a trail of sparks. Zhang Wenxi's expression crumbled. He could barely handle me barehanded. Against a saber and my micro-level lightning flash slash, he was dead meat. This isn't fair, he screamed, looking around for a weapon he didn't have. He'd left his gear at home, never expecting to actually fight today. His voice was drowned out by the roar of thunder. I unleashed the lightning flash slash. A brilliant white arc of energy lit up the darkened classroom like a bolt of real lightning. It was cold, sharp, and terrifying. Zhang Wenxi's scalp went numb. He pushed his movement technique to the absolute limit, throwing himself backward. A dozen strands of his hair were sheared off, floating in the air where his head had been a millisecond before. I didn't stop. I pressed forward, a low rumble of thunder echoing from my very bones. The power surged into my arm and flooded the blade. Another flash, another roar. Zhang Wenxi was drenched in cold sweat, his eyes wide with the realization that he was staring at his own end. I didn't dare let the silver blood battle saber touch me, and Zhang Wenxi felt the same way. He wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. With my Gale Step at the mastery level and my lightning flash slash at the micro level, I was a blur. My blade could reach any corner of that classroom in a heartbeat. Zhang Wenxi scrambled, desperately dodging. I saw my opening. I didn't swing the blade. Instead, I lashed out with a heavy kick. It caught him square in the chest and sent him flying. The selection rules were loose, but killing or crippling a classmate was still forbidden. The lightning flash slash was too lethal for this, so I only used the blade to pressure him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike with my hands and feet. Before long, Zhang Wenci was covered in bruises. He knew my plan, but he still didn't dare tank a hit from the saber. He couldn't afford the gamble. One wrong move meant he was dead or disabled. Even if I got punished later, it wouldn't fix his broken body. Then, I saw it, a massive opening under the pressure of my blade. I lunged. My left hand shot out like a bolt of lightning, fingers piercing the air. I grabbed his arm and wrapped my entire limb around it, twisting with the force of a giant python crushing its prey. It was the fourth move of the ancient killing technique, the python's body breaker. The name was aggressive, and the power backed it up. Once it locked on, it was designed to grind bone to powder. Crack! A crisp sound echoed through the room. Zhang Wenci's arm went limp, dangling uselessly at his side. It was dislocated. I blinked, a bit disappointed. I was only at the 5th stage of awakening, and my basic Mangyo breathing technique didn't provide enough raw strength. If we had been at the same level, that move would have shattered his arm into fragments. Zhang Wenci hissed, sucking in cold air as the pain hit him. His arm was visibly deformed. I didn't give him a second to breathe. Asterisk bang, 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 asterisk. I rained down punches, my fists hitting home until he was flat on the floor, gasping for air with blood leaking from the corner of his mouth. I knelt down and searched his clothes. My fingers brushed against something hard. I pulled out the spy device. I tried to be nice, but you wouldn't listen, I said with a thin smile. You got beaten for nothing, and the device is mine anyway. Don't get cocky, Zhang Wenci spat, his eyes burning with resentment. This isn't over. Still talking. I didn't even look up as I threw another punch, silencing him with a groan of pain. I kept digging through his pockets and found a small rack holding 3 vials of 100 Beast nutrient solution. I tucked them into my own pocket. Nice loot. I'll take these as a trophy. That's robbery. Zhang Wenci struggled to sit up, his voice cracking. Relax. I cut the surveillance in this building, I told him. I didn't mention Manhwa. I kept my word on that much, at least regarding the cameras. Zhang Wenci let out a cold, jagged laugh. You think you're smart? I've read the memoirs of master criminals. You had the intent to rob, and now you have the stolen goods. Even if you give them back now, it doesn't change the facts. You're going to jail. You know the law pretty well, don't you? I chuckled. I pulled out my phone and hit play on the video I'd recorded earlier. Then tell me, what crime is this? As the video played, the smirk slid off Zhang Wenci's face. He went silent. I didn't stop there. I started piling on the accusations. You spent 3 vials of nutrient solution just to get a spot on the police assistance team. You must be planning something big. Maybe you're trying to help Zhao Weiping escape? With a face like yours, you look just like that traitorous spy from the class of 5 years ago. Screw you. You're the one who looks like a spy. Zhang Wenci cursed. He tried to compose himself. Keep dreaming. You think the police will believe your fairy tales. If you're not afraid of the police, let's try something else, I said calmly. I'll blast this video to everyone in the school. Imagine the headlines. The star student of class 15 caught cheating? People will start wondering if all your past grades were fake too. Once that seed is planted, you're finished. You'll be the shame of Qingshan First High. You wouldn't dare. Zhang Wenci roared, struggling to get up. He didn't care if the whole world knew, but he couldn't let Suyin find out. He was still just a teenager, and the thought of his image crumbling in front of his crush was unbearable. I'm not lying, but that doesn't stop me from playing you, I said, patting his shoulder. I pressed down, pinning him back to the floor. Forget the nutrient solution ever existed, and I won't leak the video. If you try to burn me, we both explode. And don't bother hiring someone to steal my phone. The video is already in the cloud, set to auto-post unless I manually cancel it. Zhang Wenci gnashed his teeth. You're ruthless. But he didn't argue. He had folded. We sat in silence for a moment. I wasn't sure what else to say, so I just raised my fist and punched him again. Thud. What was that for? He screamed. That was for sending Manhwa to jump me, I said flatly. Zhang Wenci froze. How did you know it was me? He'd been careful never to show hostility toward me in class. Oh, Manhwa told me everything, I said, casually selling Manhwa out. I hadn't made any promises about keeping that secret. That useless idiot. I'm going to kill him, Zhang Wenxi hissed. Take your time. You've got plenty of it. I waved him off. So, you really don't want me coaching Lu Manhwa, huh? So what if I don't, he snapped. I get it. Rich kids like you are possessive. You don't want another guy touching the girl you like. We can negotiate. Negotiate? Zhang Wenxi interrupted, sounding disgusted. Like Lu Manhwa? Are you insane? She's my cousin. I paused, genuinely surprised. If you're cousins, why are you trying to stop me from helping her? Zhang Wenxi realized he'd said too much and shut his mouth tight. I watched him, my mind racing. Lu Manhwa wasn't just the daughter of a dojo master. Her family, the Lu clan, was a powerhouse in Qingshan City, a lineage that went back 1,000 years. Zhang Wenxi's mother must have been a Lu. This was high society infighting. Family drama, I sighed. You guys really played dirty. Zhang Wenxi's eyes turned cold and murderous. If you breathe a word of this, you're a dead man. The Federation has laws, but some families stand above them. I don't care about the Lu family, I said, shrugging. Like I said, we can talk. If you don't want me near her, it's going to cost you. I'm an orphan, Zhang Wenxi. I've been poor long enough. I don't care about people. I only care about benefits. I stood up, giving him one last look to let the pressure sink in. If you're not interested, then I'm leaving, I said, turning toward the door. Wait, Zhang Wenxi called out. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He didn't want to let me walk away. I turned back with a bright, predatory smile and sat down again. Let's talk numbers then. I leaned in, keeping my voice low and professional. You know what I charge Lu Manhwa? 3,000 yuan an hour. 2 hours a day. That's 6,000 daily, sometimes more. With 2 months left until the college entrance exams, I'd make at least 500,000 yuan from her. I peeked at Zhang Wenxi's face. He didn't even flinch at the number. Rich kids really lived in a different world. Of course, 500,000 isn't enough, I continued, shifting gears. That's just my lost wages. By quitting as her coach, I'm going to offend Lu Manhwa. You need to give me another 500,000 as compensation. 1 million yuan, total. Zhang Wenxi let out a mocking sneer. Are you insane? You've lost your mind over money. I kept my expression calm. Think about it. You pay an extra 500,000, and Lu Manhwa's progress with the Thunderbolt / grinds to a halt. The benefit to you is 10 times, maybe 100 times, that amount. Zhang Wenxi went silent, weighing the cost. Finally, he spoke. 500,000 total. Take it or leave it. My heart skipped a beat. I wanted to scream yes, right then and there. This was pure profit for doing absolutely nothing. But I kept my brow furrowed, acting like I was being cheated. I'm taking a huge risk offending her, I grumbled. The compensation is included in that 500,000, Zhang Wenxi snapped. I know Lu Manhwa better than you do. You'd only be coaching her for another month anyway. She needs time to focus on becoming an official martial artist, or she'll never make it into Galaxy University. I let out a long, dramatic sigh. Fine, 500,000 it is. But I want the transfer right now. Zhang Wenxi pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. He glared at me, his eyes turning cold. You're strong, Lin Yuan. Maybe as strong as a level 7 awakened. But if you try to play both sides, I'll make you regret being born. Relax. I'm a man of my word, I said, raising my right hand with mock solemnity. I swear, from this day forward, I will not give Lu Manhwa another second of coaching for the Thunderbolt / If I do, let lightning strike me down. I didn't mention that the job was already finished anyway. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text message from the bank confirmed the deposit, 500,000 yuan. Between this and the 3 vials of 100 Beast nutrient solution, my net worth had just cleared 1 million. I felt like I was walking on clouds. Just yesterday, I was agonizing over whether to sell a single vial of nutrients or drink it. Now, I was a millionaire. I took a deep breath to steady myself. The celebration could wait. I wasn't done with him yet. I pulled out the spy device I'd taken from him and gave it a little toss. You know, I said, smiling. This little thing is a ticket to the Shanghai Genius Training Camp. I won't overcharge you. I'll give you the same price Wei Boha did. 3 vials of nutrients. Or cash, I don't mind. Zhang Wenxi's face turned a sickly shade of green. I'd robbed him, and now I was trying to sell his own property back to him. You don't even know what the Shanghai camp is, do you? He sneered. It's a place for monsters. Unless you're at the peak of level 9, going there is a death sentence. The geniuses there would eat you alive. Then why did you buy a device from Wei Bohu? I asked. Zhang Wenxi straightened his back, looking strangely proud. I just wanted to make Teacher Su happy. What would someone like you know about that? I stared at him, speechless. This idiot spent a fortune just to get a smile from Su Yin? He was trying to woo his own teacher. I pointed a finger at him, feigning moral outrage. You shameless brat. Trying to hit on your teacher? I turned to walk away, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. He had so much money he could throw away 3 vials of nutrients just for a crush. My million yuan suddenly didn't feel like enough. I reached the classroom door, stopped, and marched back toward him. Zhang Wenxi was using a chair to try and haul his battered body off the floor. I don't need your help, he spat, seeing me approach. We aren't friends. I'm not here to help you, I said. Before he could react, I lunged. Bang, bang. 2 quick punches landed perfectly. I left him with 2 matching black eyes. That's for being a show-off, I muttered. Why? Why did you hit me again? Zhang Wenxi screamed from the floor. Don't blame me, I said, looking down at him. I'm just the messenger. Mahai paid me to give you those panda eyes. I'm going to kill that kid. Zhang Wenxi howled. Good luck with that. I called over my shoulder as I walked out, feeling much better. By 11 a.m., the selection trials officially ended. The principal's voice boomed over the loudspeakers, ordering everyone to gather at the training grounds. As I walked, I reflected on the fight. Without a blade, I was still a bit behind a level 7 awakened. My physical stats weren't quite there yet, but with a saber in my hand, I would have crushed him. I was likely at the top of the level 7 bracket, bordering on level 8. I looked at the rack of nutrient vials in my hand. These 3 would be enough to push me to level 6. I uncapped one and downed it in a single gulp. Energy detected. Cultivation speed increased by 1850%. Estimated time to full absorption, 28 hours. The system voice was music to my ears. As I got stronger, my body processed the nutrients faster. In 3 days, I'd be level 6. Most people had to spend months grinding through bottlenecks to level up. For me, there were no bottlenecks. When my progress hit 100%, I just broke through. It was as natural as water flowing downstream. Where is the 10th device holder? Get up here, a voice shouted as I reached the training ground. Coming, I called out, running up onto the high stage. I scanned the other 9 students. Most were familiar faces, 5 level 9s, 3 level 8s, and 1 level 7. Then I saw the last person in line, Wei Bohu. I was surprised. Had he managed to snatch 2 devices? Wei Bohu looked at me, his eyes wide with confusion. Lin Yuan? Where's Zhang Wenxi? I took this from someone, I said casually, taking my spot at the end of the line. Who? Why do you care? I shot back. I stood tall, the sun hitting my face, ready for whatever came next. Wei Bohu frowned, his eyes narrowing as he fell silent. Below the stage, the noise from the crowd was getting louder. Thanks to my micro-level Thunderbolt slash, a lot of students recognized me now. Lin Yuan is way too fierce, I heard someone shout. Did he actually fight his way into the top 10? Maybe it was just luck, another voice muttered, dripping with jealousy. Stop being bitter, a third student shot back. This selection isn't like a ring match. High strength doesn't guarantee you'll snag a device, but anyone who did is at least as strong as a high-level awakened. Wait, didn't Lin Yuan say he was only level 4? That's a 3-level jump in combat power. The crowd was buzzing with a mix of envy and shock. Su Yun stood near the stage, her beautiful eyes fixed on me with total disbelief. She knew that a micro-level Thunderbolt slash could let me dominate level 6, but level 7 should still have been out of my reach. Yet, here I was with a device. To her, it was proof that my actual combat strength was already on par with the elite seniors. She couldn't wrap her head around how I'd gotten so strong, so fast. Students who didn't pass can head home, a school leader announced, dispersing the crowd. Classes resume tomorrow as usual. If you're seriously injured, report to your teacher for medical leave. Officer Zhou walked over and sized me up. He was a professional martial artist, and his gaze felt like it could pierce right through me. Are you level 5? He asked. I decided to play it safe. Yes, officer. Is there a problem? No, Zhou said, his face expressionless. Your level doesn't matter as long as you have the device. He knew something fishy had happened with that device in Building 1, but he didn't care to dig deeper. One spot wasn't worth his time. You 10, line up from left to right. Get to know the person next to you. You'll be forming small teams. The school leader explained that during the search, one police officer would lead a 3-person squad. I don't want to team up with Lin Yuan. Wei Bohu barked immediately. Unlike Zhang Wenxi, Wei Bohu was obsessed with getting into the Shanghai Genius Training Camp. He's not even a high-level awakened. His strength is pathetic. He'll just hold me back. I kept my face neutral, but my opinion of this guy was dropping fast. Are you refusing an order? Zhou asked, his eyes flashing like lightning. Wei Bohu flinched, but tried to play it cool. It's not just me. Lin Yuan doesn't want to team up with me either. Right, Lin Yuan? He turned his head and glared at me, his eyes full of threats. I understood him not wanting a weak teammate, but trying to make me take the fall for his insubordination? That crossed a line. If you don't mind, I'll trade teammates with you. A calm voice interrupted. I looked over. It was Lu Minghua. Her light blue hair caught the sunlight, shimmering like a star-filled sky. She was easily the most famous student there. That works for me. Wei Bohu agreed instantly, unable to hide his delight. Lu Minghua's original teammate was a level 8. By switching, Wei Bohu got a stronger partner, and Lu Minghua wouldn't steal his glory. Any other problems? Zhou asked coldly. No? Then let's move. As we walked toward the school gates, Lu Minghua caught up to me. She gave me a playful smile. Level 5 already? That's faster than I expected. I shrugged. I was already at the bottleneck. 2 days of hard training over the weekend did the trick. I looked at her seriously. Thanks for stepping in back there. She blinked her large eyes, looking a bit mischievous. The others don't know your real strength, but I do. I wasn't about to let a good assistant like you go to waste. I offered a small, silent smile. Meanwhile, I noticed Wei Bohu walking ahead, his head down as he typed furiously on his phone. Zhang Wenxi, what the hell happened? Wei Bohu messaged. Lin Yuan ambushed you, took the device, and now he has the 3 bottles of 100 life nutrients I gave you to hold? That's your problem, Zhang Wenxi replied. Don't try to pin the dead on me. Wei Bohu sneered at his screen. His family wasn't as powerful as the Lu family, but he was a direct heir. Zhang Wenxi was just a relative of a branch family. He wasn't afraid of him. You're overthinking it, Zhang Wenxi messaged back. Asterisk, I'm just telling you that Lin Yuan has 3 bottles of high-grade nutrients that don't belong to him. He's an orphan with no background. Do with that what you will. Asterisk. Wei Bohu glanced back at me, a predatory glint in his eyes. An orphan, huh? That changed things. We reached the street and piled into a large police transport. I sat in the back row with Lu Minghua. The technology in this world was far beyond what I remembered from Earth. The police van hit 300 miles per hour effortlessly, and I could tell its limit was closer to 600. Lin Yuan, do you know who the police chief of Qingshan City is? Lu Minghua asked. No idea, I said, watching the dashboard. The movement technique you use is Gale Step, right? I nodded. Gale Step was a common level 1 technique. It wasn't surprising she recognized it. Then you must know who created it, she said with a smile. Gu Tianyu, I answered. Then it clicked. Wait, he's the police chief. Want me to ask him to give you some pointers? Lu Minghua tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. It's a small favor. Your Gale Step is at the mastery level, right? A few words from Uncle Gu might be enough to trigger an epiphany and push you to the micro level. I'll take all the luck I can get, I said, thanking her. I didn't actually need pointers since my system handled my breakthroughs, but I wasn't going to turn down her kindness. Heh. A cold, mocking laugh drifted back from the front row. Wei Bohu turned around, his face full of derision. Some people get lucky with one epiphany, and suddenly they think they're geniuses. Talking about a second epiphany like it's a walk in the park? Don't trip over your own ego. I narrowed my eyes. Wei Bohu was really starting to ask for a beating. Half an hour later, we arrived at the Qingshan City Police Department. As I stepped out of the van, I saw a massive crowd of students from other high schools gathered in an open field. There had to be 300 or 400 of them. This is why I wanted to sell the device, I muttered to myself. With this many people involved, the chances of me being the one to catch the fugitive, Zhao Weiping, were slim. Gather over there. Officer Zhou commanded. A lead officer will be assigned to you shortly. Lu Mingyue raised her hand. Officer Zhou, I need to see Chief Gu. Lin Yuan is coming with me. Zhou didn't object. But as we turned toward the main building, Wei Bohu stepped in my way. He held out his hand, his expression aggressive. Give it back, he demanded. I frowned. Give what back? Stop playing dumb, Wei Bohu hissed. The 100 life nutrients you stole from Zhang Wenxi. Those belong to me. He was just holding them. I looked him dead in the eye. First, the only thing I took from Zhang Wenxi was the device. Second, if he lost your stuff, take it up with him. Lying won't help you, Wei Bohu said, his voice dropping to a low threat. He slammed his fist into his palm with a heavy thud. Hand over the nutrients, or else. Your ending is going to be miserable, Wei Bohu sneered. I looked at him, genuinely surprised by his audacity. Are you threatening me? In a police station? It's good that you're afraid, he said, misinterpreting my shock. What exactly are you going to do? I asked. Stop the nonsense, Wei Bohu said, his lips curling into a cold, sharp smile. I suggest you think carefully before you speak. Next Monday is the school's monthly exam. With my family's background, it only takes one word from me to make sure we end up on the same combat stage. I looked him deep in the eyes for a long moment. Fine. Why wouldn't that be fine? I turned to walk away, tossing a final comment over my shoulder. Life is starting to look more and more promising. Wei Bohu froze, stunned for a second before his face darkened with rage. He realized I was mocking him. He had expected his threats to crush my spirit, but I wasn't even flinching. Lin Yuan, you just wait, he hissed, taking a deep breath to suppress his anger. Now wasn't the time for a scene. I moved back into the crowd of students. A few minutes later, Lu Mingyue emerged from the main building. She was walking with a man in his late 30s or early 40s. He was lean, dressed in a police uniform, and had eyes that seemed to pierce through everything they landed on. Chief Gu is here, someone shouted. The crowd erupted. This was Gu Tianyu, a night-level martial artist. There were only a handful of people with that kind of power in all of Qingshan City. Lu Mingyue jogged over to me, a wry smile on her face. Uncle Gu agreed to the guidance. But it won't be a private one-on-one session. That's more than enough, I said, smiling back. Thanks for the help. Honestly, I hadn't expected much anyway. Students, welcome to the police department, Gu Tianyu announced. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried perfectly to every ear in the field. On behalf of the police force, I want to thank you for your courage. Thank you for helping us hunt down the spy, Zhao Weiping. You're welcome, Chief. It's our duty, students shouted back, clapping enthusiastically. Gu Tianyu pressed his hands down to quiet the crowd. You are the brightest young minds in our city. I don't have much to teach you in such a short time, so I'll demonstrate the Gale steps. As the creator of this technique, I have a bit of insight to share. The students grew frantic with excitement, quickly clearing a large space for him. Gale steps was only a rank 1 technique, but it was famous for its low energy consumption. In a fight where your stamina was drained, a low-level movement technique could be the difference between life and death. Plus, mastering a lower technique often paved the way for learning high-level ones much faster. Gu Tianyu didn't waste time. He moved. Suddenly, a breeze swept through the field. His movements were beyond mastery. My eyes widened. He wasn't actually moving that fast. I could outrun him, but his steps were impossibly smooth. Usually, no matter how fast you run, there's a tiny fraction of a second when your foot hits the ground and pauses. Gu Tianyu didn't have that pause. He flowed like melted chocolate. It was as if he wasn't using the wind. He was the wind. Gale Steps has detected high-level wind intent. Entering epiphany state. Cultivation speed skyrocketing. Progress increased by 40%. 35%. Gale Steps accumulation sufficient. Level up, micro level. The cold system notifications fired off one after another. A massive flood of insights crashed into my mind, making me feel lightheaded. Instinctively, I stepped out into the open space and began to practice the Gale Steps myself, letting my body catch up to the knowledge pouring into my brain. Gu Tianyu caught sight of me out of the corner of his eye. His gaze sharpened. He could feel my technique improving at a terrifying rate. What's up with that guy? One student whispered. Is he having an epiphany? Another asked, stunned. Holy crap, look at him. It really is an epiphany. Which school is he from? Look at the uniform. Qingshan First High. No wonder. Lu Mingyue stared at me, her eyes filled with disbelief. She had joked about me having epiphanies before, but seeing it happen again right in front of her was something else entirely. Nearby, Wei Bohu stood in the crowd, his face turning an ugly shade of gray. Gale steps accumulation sufficient. Level up. Expert level. Another notification rang in my head. My movements became even more fluid, my feet barely touching the grass. I felt like I was about to turn into a literal gust of wind. He's still in the epiphany. His gale steps feel almost as good as Chief Gu's. I'm so jealous. Why can't I feel anything? Gu Tianyu stopped moving and watched me, a look of genuine praise in his eyes. As a knight, he knew epiphanies couldn't be forced. They required luck, but more importantly, they required incredible innate talent. Lu Mingyue walked up to him and whispered, Uncle Gu, that's Lin Yuan, the one I told you about. His thunderbolt / also reached the micro level through an epiphany. Gu Tianyu was genuinely shocked. Twice? And he's only a teenager? This kid's comprehension was monstrous. Asterisk progress increased by 10%. 9%. Asterisk. Asterisk epiphany ended. Gale steps current level. Expert. 99%. Asterisk. I came to a halt and stood straight. Asterisk to reach perfect level. An epiphany is required to break the boundary. Currently unable to break through. Asterisk. I blinked. My luck was that bad. I was only 1% away. It seemed the jump from expert to perfect wasn't just about practice. It was a bottleneck. I analyzed it quickly. To trigger an epiphany, I needed to expose the technique to something higher, like thunderbolt / sensing lightning, or gale steps sensing Gu Tianyu's wind intent. The problem was, Gu Tianyu's wind had a limit. It could only take me to the peak of expert. To reach perfect, I needed something even more profound. In the world of martial arts, expert was usually the highest a normal person could go. Perfect was a realm typically reserved for the creators of the techniques themselves. A true young hero, Gu Tianyu said, clapping as he walked toward me. Chief Gu, thank you, I said, bowing slightly. He laughed. Don't thank me. An epiphany is your own talent at work. I can't take credit for that. If you hadn't demonstrated the technique, I wouldn't have had the breakthrough, I replied sincerely. Gu Tianyu nodded. Then his expression turned serious. If I'm not mistaken, your gale steps have already reached the limit of the expert level. Yes, I admitted. The crowd gasped. Expert. That was a title given to the top tier of practitioners in any field. Many people spent decades training and never reached that level, even with a basic technique. Gu Tianyu thought for a moment. Lin Yuan, if your gale steps ever reach the perfect level, come find me. I will personally teach you a new technique. I felt a surge of excitement. Thank you, Chief. A technique gifted by a knight would be at least A rank. The surrounding students looked at me with pure envy, their whispers filling the air. Gu Tianyu chatted with the students for a while longer before heading back to the main building. I didn't stay still. I started walking toward Wei Bohu with purpose. He had been looking for trouble since the moment I arrived, and I wasn't the type to just take it. He was at the 9th stage of awakening, sure, but he wasn't strong enough to crush me. Wei Boa's face darkened instantly. Gale steps is just a basic level 1 martial art, he spat, his voice cold. Being at the expert level isn't that impressive. A B-rank movement technique at the proficient level could easily match it. You're right, I said, nodding in agreement. I looked him dead in the eye and smiled. Since you're so confident, you must have mastered a B-rank movement technique to the proficient level yourself. Why don't you show me? Wei Bohu froze. Martial arts weren't easy. They required years of grueling practice, and B-rank techniques were exponentially harder. He had spent years just to get a B-rank boxing style to the proficient level. He let out a cold snort. I don't need a B-rank movement technique to beat you. If you don't believe me, we can settle this in the ring during the monthly exams. I believe you, I said flatly. The honesty caught him off guard. He choked on his next words, his face flushing with frustration. Believing me won't save you. I laughed softly. Then tell me about your fist. Is it fast? Can your punch break the sound barrier? Wei Bohu looked at me with pure disdain. Only a knight-level warrior can create a sonic boom. You're talking nonsense. So, you can't do it, I said, patting my chest with a look of mock relief. That's good. I was worried for a second. Wei Boha's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Well, if your punch isn't faster than the speed of sound, then it's definitely not faster than my voice, I explained, looking genuinely puzzled. So how are you going to hit me? Don't you understand? Your physics grades must be terrible. The exams are coming up, you know. You should focus on that. I leaned in closer. I'm saying that if something doesn't exceed the speed of sound, it can't outrun a voice. Do you get it now? Lu Mingyue couldn't help herself. She burst out laughing at my serious tone. The students nearby followed suit, their laughter echoing across the field. Wei Boha's face turned a mottled shade of red and purple. He gave me one last hateful glare before shoving his way through the crowd and storming off. That was mean, Lu Mingyue said, still smiling. You basically treated him like he was an idiot. I shrugged. He asked for it. I just gave him a lesson. Anyway, I haven't congratulated you on your epiphany yet, she added. I sighed. It's a mixed blessing. What's wrong? I'm just one step away from the perfect level, I said, feeling the frustration itch at the back of my mind. Being stuck in the middle is annoying. Honestly, I'd almost rather not have had the epiphany at all. Lu Mingyue went silent. I looked at her. Why aren't you talking? I realized I shouldn't have laughed at Wei Bohu, she muttered. We chatted for a bit until the police escort arrived. They moved with heavy, serious strides, instantly killing the relaxed atmosphere. The leaders started calling out names, assigning students to their respective officers. I scanned the group and raised an eyebrow. I saw a familiar face. Zhou Wei. He was a formal martial artist. I glanced at Lu Mingyue's profile. It wasn't a coincidence that we were assigned to him. It was definitely because of her status. In the Qingshan police force, most officers were only at the 8th or 9th stage of awakening. Get in the car, Zhou Wei commanded. We'll talk on the way. We drove about 10 kilometers to a massive shopping plaza. It was a bustling hub of activity, packed with shops and thousands of people weaving through the corridors. I remembered coming here a few times in the past. Zhou Wei pointed toward the complex. This is our search area. Zhao Weiping is likely here. Lu Mingyue looked confused. Why here? Checkpoints are at every exit of the city, Zhou Wei explained. If he wants to survive, he has to flee into the wilderness. To do that, he needs supplies. This is the best place to get them. Our job is to find him when he shows up. Just the three of us? I asked, looking at the sprawling plaza. This place saw over 100,000 people a day. That's not an issue, Zhou Wei said. Every surveillance camera here is linked to the police department's Skynet system. If Zhao Weiping shows his face, he'll be identified instantly. But he's not stupid. He'll use a disguise. He handed us 2 earpieces. Put these on. The Skynet AI will alert us whenever it spots a customer it can't identify. We just need to go over and verify who they are. People wearing masks or heavy makeup are a minority. The 3 of us can handle it. We put the earpieces in. Once Zhou Wei saw we were ready, he nodded. Go get familiar with the layout. Move out. Several days passed. A persistent spring rain hung over Qingshan City, turning the sky a depressing gray. The crowds at the plaza thinned out, and the atmosphere felt heavy. I leaned against a tree on one of the plaza's internal streets, watching the fine drizzle. I was bored out of my mind. We hadn't found Zhao Weiping. Every person I checked was either sick and wearing a mask or had gone way too heavy on the plastic surgery. I didn't feel like a police assistant. I felt like a glorified security guard. The only progress I'd made was collecting a few phone numbers from pretty office workers who walked by. If you're tired, go take a nap in the car, Zhou Wei said, walking over with a black umbrella. I'm fine, I replied. My eyes were sharp. I had broken through to the 6th stage of awakening that morning. My body was strong enough to go days without sleep. A formal martial artist like Zhou Wei could probably go weeks if he had to. Suddenly, a voice crackled in my ear. It wasn't the flat, robotic tone of the AI. It was a frantic dispatcher from the station. All units, attention. Zhao Weiping has crashed through the checkpoint at the Shiko interchange on the 2nd Ring Highway. He is heading toward the Wanli Mountains. Vehicle is a white Puma F230. All nearby units intercept immediately. I pulled out the earpiece and looked at Zhou Wei with a wry smile. Looks like my job is over. With the police force fully mobilized, Zhao Weiping was finished the moment he showed his face. "Wanna come watch?" Zhou Wei asked, grinning as he took the earpiece back. The pressure he'd been under seemed to vanish instantly. I shook my head. "The interchange is miles away. By the time we get there, it'll be over." Lu Mingyue agreed. "I'm not going either." "Then I'll see you later," Zhou Wei said, heading for his car. "I'll buy you both dinner when this is settled." He drove off into the rain. Lu Mingyue watched the car disappear before turning to me. "What now?" "Going home." "Yeah," I said. "I need to pick up some beast meat first." It wasn't as effective as the high-grade nutrition fluids, but it was cheaper. For me, it was the best value for my money. "I'll go with you," she said. "I need to stop by the butcher anyway." I looked at her, surprised. "What?" She laughed, rolling her eyes. "I'm not some helpless princess. I'm actually a great cook. I have a junior chef certification, and I'm planning to get the next level after the exams." We walked toward the butcher shop, chatting despite the rain. Because of the weather, the shop was nearly empty. There was only one other customer, a man wearing a thick mask, likely to block the smell of the raw meat. He was busy picking out several large cuts of beast meat at the counter. Lu Mingyue saw the mask, and her training kicked in. She stepped forward. "Sir, I'm with the police assistance team. Please remove your mask and show your ID." I couldn't believe it. Lu Mingyue was already developing a professional habit before she even graduated. I was about to say something to stop her, but the customer at the meat counter turned around. He pulled down his mask, and my heart skipped a beat. I knew that face. I'd seen it on the news a dozen times. It was the Tianwu spy, Zhao Weiping. My hand moved like a flash of lightning, gripping the hilt of my silver blood blade. The butcher recognized him too, his eyes widening in terror. He didn't get to finish his sentence. Zhao Weiping swung his palm with crushing force. There was a sickening thud, and the butcher's head was driven straight into his own chest. He was dead before he hit the floor. The two security guards in the shop reacted instantly, reaching for their sidearms. Puff, puff. Two dull sounds echoed. The guards, both high-level awakened, collapsed. A heavy meat cleaver was buried deep in each of their hearts. Blood began to pool across the floor, turning the tiles a dark, visceral red. My scalp went numb. I hadn't even seen him move. If those blades had been aimed at me, I'd be a corpse right now. The police reports were wrong. His injuries weren't that severe, and he certainly wasn't fleeing the city in a car. This man was a monster. Miles away, on the highway, the storm was raging. A white SUV tore through the rain at 500 kilometers per hour, pursued by a fleet of police cruisers. Police Chief Gu Tianyu watched the SUV from his car, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. Why would a spy as clever as Zhao Weiping choose such a clumsy, direct escape route? He pushed the thought aside. He'd get his answers once the man was in cuffs. Gu Tianyu kicked his car door open while moving at top speed and vanished. A second later, he appeared standing on the roof of the fleeing SUV. The wind screamed past him, but he didn't flinch. He raised his hand like a blade and chopped downward. A massive green energy blade manifested, slicing the SUV clean in half. The wreck tumbled across the asphalt, sending sparks flying through the rain. Gu Tianyu reached into the debris and dragged the driver out. The face was Zhao Weiping's, but the eyes were hollow, like a puppet's. "Zhao Weiping, you're under arrest," Gu began, but he stopped. He felt the weight in his hand change. With a light squeeze, the body disintegrated into red sparks of light, leaving nothing behind but a pile of empty clothes. A clone ability. Gu Tianyu's face paled. "Damn it, it's a diversion." Back at the butcher shop, Zhao Weiping sighed, looking at us with a touch of frustration. "And here I thought all the cops had left the city." He studied our uniforms. "High schoolers. One level 6, one level 9. You're pretty talented for your age, girl." Lu Mingyue looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. "Level 6? Lin Yuan, weren't you just level 5 a few days ago?" I didn't answer. This wasn't the time for a chat. "Why couldn't you just stay quiet?" Zhao Weiping's voice turned ice cold. "Now I have to waste time killing you." He lunged. His palm strike was violent, aimed directly at Lu Mingyue's forehead. He wanted the level 9 threat gone first. Lu Mingyue threw herself backward, the wind of the strike grazing her hair. But as she dodged, her chest was left wide open. Zhao Weiping didn't hesitate. He channeled his origin power into a follow-up strike. Even a level 9 awakened would have their ribs shattered and heart crushed by a hit like that. But just as his hand was about to connect, a blinding burst of purple electricity erupted from Lu Minghua's chest. Boom. A bolt of 100,000 volts shot out, catching Zhao Weiping off guard. It was a Thunderbolt Protector, a $5 million piece of tech from the Federal Academy of Sciences. It was designed to stop even formal martial artists in their tracks. Zhao Weiping was a hardened spy. Realizing he couldn't dodge, he gritted his teeth and forced his palm forward through the surge. The resulting shockwave was like a physical wall. Tables and chairs were pulverized, sent flying into the walls as splinters. I was caught in the blast, thrown through the plate glass window, and onto the sidewalk outside. Thanks to my Vajra body technique, my skin held firm, though my uniform was shredded by glass. Lu Minghua wasn't so lucky. She took the brunt of the impact and was launched like a cannonball, skidding dozens of meters into the middle of the street. She coughed up blood, her chest visibly sunken. Inside the shop, Zhao Weiping wasn't doing well either. He stepped out into the rain, his body trembling as blue sparks danced across his skin. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the downpour intensified. "Little girl," he growled, his face contorted with rage. "How do you want to die?" His plan was ruined. He had wanted to kill the butcher, grab supplies, and slip into the wilderness. Now, the noise had drawn too much attention. Worse, the electricity had aggravated his old wounds. He was no longer at the level of a formal martial artist, but he was still stronger than any awakened student. You're a rank 3 martial artist," Lu Minghua wheezed, struggling to crawl away. Despair filled her eyes. Even 100,000 volts hadn't killed him. "Correct," Zhao Weiping sneered. "Your reward is death." He raised his fist and dove toward her, aiming to crush her skull like a ripe melon. He wanted to see her head explode. He needed to vent his fury. Clang. Lu Minghua squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the end. She felt a massive vibration, but no pain. She opened her eyes and gasped. Half a meter above her, a long, slender warblade was held horizontally. The blade was covered in cracks, looking like it might shatter at any moment, but it held firm against Zhao Weiping's fist. I had stepped in. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I didn't know why I did it. Maybe I knew I couldn't outrun him. Maybe I just couldn't watch her die. Or maybe, part of me really wanted to see if I could take his head. A hero saving the beauty? Zhao Weiping taunted, his eyebrows lifting in surprise. He was weakened, yes, but a level 6 student shouldn't have been able to stop his strike. I forced a grin, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. Not exactly. This girl is from a famous rich family at school. If I save her, I can demand a massive reward. Tell you what, Zhao, you give me 200,000, and I'll walk away right now. Cash or transfer, I'm flexible. I was just talking to buy time. We were in the middle of the street. People were watching. Surely, the police were already on their way. Your clever little plan won't work, Zhao Weiping sneered, his voice cold. The police were all lured away by my double. They won't be coming anytime soon. He wasn't stupid. He knew I was stalling. He didn't waste another second. He shifted his weight, preparing to launch. I didn't wait for him to move. I felt the thunderous rhythm of the thunderbolt erupting within my veins. I struck first. My silver blood warblade sliced through the falling rain, leaving a trail of glowing light in its wake. It was a lightning-fast strike aimed straight for his throat. Micro-level blade technique? And at such a high level. Zhao Weiping's eyes widened with genuine surprise. It seems your talent is even better than the girl's. A red light flashed in his eyes. His origin power exploded outward, propelling his body half a meter to the side. He avoided my blade with terrifying ease. Die, he roared. Before I could pull my sword back, he lunged. His fingers curled into a claw, red energy condensing at the tips until they looked like half-foot-long crimson blades. He swung at my throat. The air itself seemed to explode with a deafening boom. I scrambled backward, pushing my gale pace to the absolute limit. My body felt like it was turning into the wind itself, sending rainwater splashing in every direction. Flash. The red claws grazed me. I felt a stinging heat. 5 thin lines of blood appeared on my neck. My heart went cold. My diamond body technique was at the 3rd level, but against raw origin power, it felt like wet tissue paper. If my movement technique hadn't been at the peak of the expert level, that single swipe would have taken my head off. This wasn't like sparring with Ma Hai or Zhang Wenxi. This was real. If I lost, I died. Everything would end right here in the mud. The rain poured down harder, freezing and relentless. A wave of primal terror surged through me. Facing death is a horrific thing, and I was no exception. I was terrified. I took a deep, shaky breath. I forced the freezing air into my lungs, using the cold to numb the fear. I pushed the panic down into a dark corner of my mind. Fear wouldn't save me. It would only make me die faster. I had to be calm. I had to be perfect. Your movement is that good too? Zhao Weiping paused, a cruel, satisfied smile spreading across his face. Killing a genius like you. I bet the Federation will really feel the sting of this loss. You're not killing anyone, I said, my voice flat. I held my blade vertically in front of my chest, my eyes locking onto his. Zhao Weiping, you Federation scum, surrender now. Hold on, kid. We're coming to help. A few brave passers-by shouted from the sidewalk, running toward us to help. Zhao Weiping didn't even turn his head fully. He just glanced at them out of the corner of his eye, his grin turning monstrous. Asterisk bang, 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 asterisk. He became a blur. In a heartbeat, 3 bodies hit the pavement. Blood mixed with the cold rain, washing down the street. The other people who were running to help stopped dead in their tracks, their faces turning pale with horror. Don't come over here, I shouted, my voice raw. Everyone get back. Martial arts were common in the Federation, but most people stopped training seriously once they started working. These people were only at the middle stages of awakening. Against a monster like this, they weren't help, they were just targets. Their presence would only get in my way. Be careful, young man, a middle-aged man yelled, ushering the others away as they retreated in a panic. Zhao Weiping didn't chase them. He didn't care about them. He turned back to me and charged. To him, 1,000 ordinary lives weren't worth as much as one dead genius. I met him head-on. Our blades and claws clashed in the middle of the storm, a dance of cold steel and red energy. While we fought for our lives, a van pulled up at the west end of the shopping plaza. It had the logo for Qingshan City Television on the side. It's so unfair. A young woman named Wang Ershui complained from the passenger seat. She was a rookie reporter, barely 20, with big eyes full of frustration. Sisterly gets to cover the police hunt for Zhao Weiping, and I'm stuck reporting on plaza snacks in the rain. The cameraman, an older man acting as the driver, chuckled. You just started, Ershui. Give it a few years. I've been here 6 months. When am I going to get a real scoop? She grumbled as she stepped out of the van. She froze, as dozens of people were screaming, sprinting out of the plaza in a blind panic. She grabbed a passerby. What's happening? It's Zhao Weiping. He's in the plaza. He's killing people, the man gasped. A student is fighting him right now. Wang Ershui stood stunned. The station had said Zhao Weiping was miles away on the highway. Then, the adrenaline hit. She didn't care why he was here. This was the story of a lifetime. She didn't even grab an umbrella. She grabbed the cameraman and sprinted toward the center of the plaza. After a few hundred meters, 2 figures emerged through the curtain of rain, locked in a deadly struggle. Start the feed, she shouted, pulling out her microphone. Now, this is Qingshan Television. I'm reporter Wang Ershui, she shouted into the camera, her voice competing with the thunder. It is March 24th, 1:30 p.m. We are witnessing a brutal attack by the spy Zhao Weiping. Several citizens have already been murdered. Right now, a brave young student is risking his life to hold him back. We don't know his name yet, but he is wearing a Qingshan First High uniform. Behind her, the battle was savage. My blade sparked against his origin power over and over. Rainwater sprayed everywhere as we tore up the pavement. Back at the TV station, the middle-aged director was lounging in his office when the feed popped up on his monitor. What is Wang Ershui doing? I told her to cover food. Then he heard her words. He jumped so fast he fell out of his chair. Don't help me up. Go tell the station head. Now, he scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his backside. Wait, there's no time. I'm making the call. Put this on every single channel we have. Move. In less than a minute, all 17 channels of Qingshan TV switched to the same image. Breaking news, a voice announced. Across the city, millions of people looked up at their screens. In homes, offices, and restaurants, the world stopped. Mom, stop scrolling. Look at the TV. Lee, turn on the news. It's on every channel. A kid is fighting a spy alone. The viewership numbers skyrocketed. The live stream was ripped and shared across the internet, spreading like wildfire. At Qingshan First High, students crowded around phones in the hallways. Wait, isn't that Lin Yuan? I know him. He's the senior with the micro-level Thunderbolt slash. He's going to die out there. Someone help him. The school principal slammed his fist on his desk. I'm the principal. Get every teacher with high-speed movement techniques to that plaza immediately. On a stretch of the city highway, Director Gu of the police force was staring at his phone. A subordinate had just handed it to him. He saw the girl bleeding on the ground, and his face went white. Lu Mingyue and Lin Yuan. They won't last much longer, Gu Tianyu hissed. Contact the commander of the 27th Army Group. Tell them we need a sky mecha. Now, in another part of the city, a massive roar echoed from the top of a luxury skyscraper. Where? A thick reinforced wall exploded outward. A tall, powerful figure burst through the debris, leaping into the air. He moved so fast that white vapor cones began to form around his body. He was seconds away from breaking the sound barrier. The rain lashed down in sheets, blurring my vision as I gritted my teeth. I pushed my Thunderbolt slash to its absolute limit, my muscles screaming under the strain. I could see the female reporter out of the corner of my eye, her mouth moving, but I couldn't hear a word she said. The pressure Zhao Weiping put on me was suffocating. I couldn't afford a single distraction. Every ounce of my focus was poured into the fight, yet I was still losing ground. His physical stats were on a different level. He wasn't just stronger, he was crushing me. Worse, he had force, that terrifying energy that made his every move lethal. Even my third-level Vajra body couldn't hold up forever. I tried to dodge, but I wasn't fast enough. Zhao Weiping's hand, hooked like a claw and glowing with condensed force, ripped across my chest. A deep, jagged gash opened up. Blood sprayed out, only to be instantly washed away by the freezing rain. The wound was 6 inches long, the muscle underneath turning a sickly pale white from the water. It looked horrific, and it wasn't the only one. My body was covered in dozens of similar cuts. Back in the city, people watching the live stream were losing their minds. They were screaming at their screens, demanding to know where the police were. To them, I was just a handsome kid being butchered by a monster. I could see the cameraman nearby, Wang Erzhui, trying to rush forward to help. His partner grabbed him, shouting that he'd be killed in one hit. I'm Wang Erzhui from Qingshan TV. The reporter sobbed into his mic, his voice shaking. As you can see, the situation is dire. The boy is fading. But I have to believe he can win. Belief didn't help when a heavy boot slammed into my ribs. The impact felt like being hit by a speeding truck. I flew 30 feet through the air and crashed into the pavement with a sickening thud, sending a massive spray of water into the air. I tried to crawl up, but my blood was already mixing with the puddles, staining the ground dark red. I looked up through the rain. Zhao Weiping was already on me, bringing a literal storm of wind and water with him. Die, he roared. He gathered his force into a single, massive punch aimed straight for my head. I had wasted too much of his time. He knew if he didn't kill me now, he wouldn't be able to escape the city. The blow whistled through the air, but it hit nothing but rain. The ground where I'd been standing exploded from the pressure of the shockwave. My third-level Vajra body had saved me again. The fall hadn't paralyzed me like it did Lu Mingyue. I managed to roll away, but there was no joy in it. My energy was spent. I needed a second to breathe, but Zhao Weiping wasn't going to give it to me. My pupils shrank as his palm, glowing with lethal energy, tore through the rain toward my face. I remembered the butcher. This was the same move that had driven that man's head into his own chest. I pushed my gale steps to the breaking point, trying to retreat, but he was too fast. 0.5 meter, 1 foot, 2 inches. Then, in that split second between life and death, a cold, mechanical voice echoed in my head. Asterisk Gale Steps has entered an epiphany. Gale Steps has reached perfection level. Asterisk. A flood of insight crashed into my mind. Suddenly, the wind wasn't my enemy anymore. It was my tool. I felt the air moving around Zhao Weiping's palm. As his strike came forward, I didn't just move. I flowed. I borrowed the force of his own wind to propel myself backward, gliding away like a leaf in a storm. His palm struck empty air. Zhao Weiping frowned, his eyes narrowing. He didn't understand how my speed had suddenly doubled. He surged forward again, his legs pumping with force, closing the gap in a heartbeat. He threw a punch. I drifted to the side. He threw another. I slipped past it with a fluid grace that felt like dancing. He was losing his mind. He didn't believe someone could have a breakthrough in the middle of a life-and-death struggle. That only happened in movies. He unleashed a barrage of punches, fast as lightning and dense as the rain itself, but every single one missed. High above the city, Director Gu stared at his phone in shock. He was the creator of the Gale Steps technique. He knew exactly what he was seeing. Perfection level. He had told me to find him once I reached that level, but he'd meant it as a joke. It usually took decades, and even then, most experts never reached it. But even with perfection level, he knew I was in trouble. My breathing was ragged. I was inhaling rainwater and spitting out white mist with every gasp. How long until the Sky Mecha arrives? Gu demanded. 15 minutes, sir. Gu closed his eyes. I didn't have 15 minutes. I could feel my body failing. Perfection level Gale Steps was amazing for dodging, but it burned through my stamina like a furnace. Even with my high endurance cultivation, I only had 5 minutes left in me. I looked at Zhao Weiping. 5 minutes wasn't enough for the police to get here, and I couldn't run. He was still faster than me in a straight line. If I wanted to live, I had to stop running. I had to kill him before I collapsed. I thought about the epiphany I just had. I had reached perfection in my movement because I was forced to survive. What if I did the same with my blade? I gripped the hilt of my silver blood saber. I wasn't going to delay anymore. I was going to attack. I would use my thunderbolt slash until I forced another breakthrough, or died trying. You're slippery, Zhao Weiping sneered, though his eyes were full of malice. He knew his time was running out too. He glanced over at the unconscious Lu Mingyue and then back at me. How about this? I'll let you live. Just step aside and let me kill that girl. He was lying, of course. He just wanted to break my spirit so he could finish me off easily. I looked at him, my grip tightening on my sword. That's a nice suggestion, I said, my voice cold. But I think I'd rather just take your head. Zhao Weiping's eyes were full of a fake, nauseating sincerity. I'm not lying to you, he said, his voice urgent. The police are almost here. I just want to leave. Step aside, and we both get what we want. It was a tempting offer. Not far away, a camera was broadcasting our every word to millions of people. I could almost feel the collective breath of the audience catching as they stared at their screens, waiting for my answer. In the live chat, pessimism was spreading like a virus. People were already mourning Lu Mingyue. They didn't blame me, though. Between life and death, there is a great terror that even the elderly can't face calmly, let alone a teenager. If I chose to run, they'd say I'd done enough. He's going to run, one comment flickered by. He only fought this hard to survive in the first place. Fear is human, but they didn't know me. That's a nice suggestion, I repeated, my voice dropping to a cold, jagged whisper. But I think I'd rather just take your head. I didn't wait for his reaction. I lunged. My body moved like a sword unsheathed, my silver blood saber cutting through the curtain of rain. Thunderbolt slash. A streak of fluorescent light tore through the gloom, illuminating the dark clouds above. The audience went wild. Those who had called me a coward moments ago were silenced. I didn't care about their praise. I cared about the blood in my veins and the weight of the steel in my hand. But reality was harsher than a live stream. I was at a disadvantage. My stamina was bottoming out, and I couldn't afford a long, drawn-out tactical fight. I had to gamble. I had to be reckless. Within seconds, new gashes opened up on my arms and chest. I didn't even flinch. My eyes stayed locked on him, cold and detached. I swung the saber again and again, turning the blade into a continuous loop of lightning. Zhao Weiping roared, throwing a punch packed with raw essence. The force was terrifying, whistling through the air and blasting the rainwater into a fine mist. My hair whipped wildly in the shockwave, but I didn't dodge. A low rumble of thunder erupted from my own body. I swung the silver blood saber in a horizontal arc, aiming straight for his throat. Die! I hissed. Zhao Weiping's lips curled into a smug grin. He saw what I was doing, trying to force a double-kill scenario to make him back off. But he was faster. His punch would land first, shattering my ribs and ruining my trajectory before my blade could touch him. Or so he thought. His smile froze. Mid-swing, the silver blood saber accelerated. It still wasn't faster than his fist, but it was fast enough that even if he hit me, the tip of my blade would rip his throat open before I flew back. Damn you, he growled, pulling his punch at the last millisecond to intercept the blade. Clang, the collision sent sparks flying through the rain. The vibration numbed my arms, and the saber was knocked back violently. I didn't mind. I was smiling, because in my head, the mechanical voice I'd been waiting for finally spoke. Asterisk in a life-and-death crisis, Thunderbolt Slash has reached an epiphany. Progress increased by 20%, 40%, 60%, asterisk. I charged again. 1 strike, 2 strikes. Each one was faster than the last, timed to the rhythm of the crashing thunder above. I was becoming the storm. Zhao Weiping's face turned ashen. He was struggling to keep up. He couldn't understand how someone could have a second breakthrough in the middle of a single fight. To him, I wasn't a student anymore. I was a monster. Thunderbolt Slash has reached expert level. A flood of new understanding surged into my mind. The way I held the grip, the way I channeled my strength, it all shifted. Boom. A sound like a heavy drum exploded from my chest. I swung the saber diagonally. It was a blur of light nearly 10 feet long. Zhao Weiping's eyes widened. He tried to leap back, but he was too slow. Punch! The blade bit deep. A spray of crimson mixed with the rain, splashing onto the pavement. Zhao Weiping stumbled back 10 paces, his hand clutching his chest. A massive wound ran from his left shoulder down to his right hip, so deep I could see the white of his ribs. For the first time since the fight started, I had drawn blood. Zhao Weiping looked down at the wound, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He was terrified. If he had been a fraction of a second slower, I would have cleaved him in half. He looked at me with pure confusion. A breakthrough is supposed to be a moment of clarity, a slight edge. Why was I getting exponentially stronger every second? He wasn't the only one confused. Even the experts watching the feed, like Gu Tianyu, were shaken. This was my third epiphany in one afternoon. It was beyond talent. It was demonic. The rain began to thin out. On the street, I stood my ground, my saber humming. Every time Zhao Weiping tried to counter, I hit him 10 times harder. Blood flowers bloomed across his body. He was done. He knew it. Kid, Zhao Weiping spat, his voice trembling with malice. I'll be staying in Qingshan City for a while. Once I heal up, I'm going to find you and take my time killing you. He turned to bolt. I let out a short, sharp laugh. You think you're leaving? You can't stop me, he sneered over his shoulder. He was faster than me in a sprint. He thought he could just walk away. Try me. I stepped forward and swung. The fluorescent arc of my blade stretched out, its speed suddenly doubling. Zhao Weiping didn't even have time to raise his arms. Slash. Another deep gash appeared on his back, exposing bone. How? He wheezed, clutching his side. Your movement isn't fast enough to catch me. I didn't answer. I just kept moving. The system notifications were still ringing in my head. Asterisk progress increased by 10%. 10%. Asterisk. I had reached expert level, but the epiphany hadn't stopped. I had been hiding my true speed, waiting for the moment he tried to run. I wasn't going to let him escape. After all, this guy was a walking 1 million yuan bounty, and I intended to collect. Zhao Weiping tried everything to escape. He lunged left, darted right, and scrambled to find an opening, but the fluorescent arcs of my blade followed him like a shadow. I didn't give him an inch. If he stopped to block, he lived for another second. If he didn't, he was dead. It felt exactly like the time Ning Chuan trapped Zhang Wenxi in the classroom during the trials. The only difference was that my saber was faster now. And this time, I was allowed to kill. Slash. Blood sprayed as my blade cut through the air. Zhao Weiping was forced back again, his body a map of deep, jagged wounds. He was drenched in red. I never thought I'd fall to a kid at the 6th stage of awakening. He wheezed, finally stopping his attempt to flee. A savage, desperate look crossed his face. But if I'm going down, I'm taking a genius like you with me. That's a fair trade. He stopped running. Instead, the origin power inside him began to boil. It surged toward his hands, radiating a terrifying, volatile energy. He was preparing a final, suicidal strike. I felt the shift in the air and didn't hesitate. I stepped into my gale steps and swung. A 3-meter-long arc of light shot through the rain, fast as a lightning bolt. Zhao Weiping didn't even try to block it. He twisted his body, letting the blade bite into his thigh and back, non-lethal spots. He didn't care about the pain anymore. He was already a dead man walking. His hands glowed like white-hot flames, the sheer heat vaporizing the raindrops before they could even touch him. I didn't feel fear. My eyes stayed cold. I swung again, and then again, each strike faster than the last. My blade moved like a silver river pouring from the sky, relentless and overwhelming. Ding! The cold, synthesized voice of the system echoed in my brain. Asterisk epiphany for Thunderbolt Slash has ended. Accumulation complete. Skill evolved to perfect level. Asterisk. Suddenly, the saber felt like an extension of my own arm. It wasn't just a technique anymore. It was an instinct, as natural as breathing. I gripped the hilt and swung. Boom. A sound like a localized thunderclap erupted from the blade. At the perfect level, every ounce of power was contained within the steel, not a single drop of energy wasted. My wrist flickered. 3 silver arcs appeared in the air simultaneously, crossing over each other to form an inverted triangle. They locked onto Zhao Weiping, sealing every escape route. He froze. He thought 2 of them were illusions meant to hide the real killing blow. But as the sharp, biting chill of the steel neared his skin, he realized the terrifying truth. All 3 were real. All 3 were lethal. He tried to retreat, his survival instinct pushing his speed to the absolute limit. But against my silver light, he looked like he was moving in slow motion. Thud! Thud! The 2 diagonal arcs slammed into the gathered energy in his hands. With a deafening explosion, his crimson origin power shattered and washed away in the rain. The 3rd arc, the horizontal one, passed straight through his neck. It didn't even slow down. A thin red line appeared. A moment later, his head was tossed high into the air, followed by a geyser of blood. It doesn't even hurt, was likely his last thought as he caught a glimpse of his own headless body before his world went dark. In the distance, I heard Wang Ershui screaming into his microphone. He did it. The spy from the heavenly dance realm, the federal fugitive Zhao Weiping, has been decapitated by a Qingshan youth. The livestream chats exploded. Most people were just shocked, but the martial arts experts watching were speechless. They knew exactly how difficult that final move was. A ray of sunlight pierced through the dark clouds, hitting the wet pavement. The first spring rain of Qingshan City was over. I tilted my head back, closing my eyes, letting the soft warmth hit my face. Below me, Zhao Weiping's blood mixed with the rainwater, spreading in a vivid, crimson pool. I felt strangely calm. For my first time killing someone, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't even upset. In the eyes of the Federation, he was a monster. To his own people, maybe I was the villain. It wasn't about right or wrong. It was just about who was stronger. The heart of the martial path. I whispered to myself, falling into a deep thought. Where? A massive, booming voice snapped me out of it. Before I could even process the sound, a tall, imposing figure blurred into my vision. He was suddenly there, cradling the fallen Lu Manhwa. His speed was terrifying. I stared at him, my heart racing for the first time. Dad, I'm okay, Lu Manhwa said weakly. She pointed toward me. He's my classmate. He saved me. He killed Zhao Weiping. I knew who he was immediately. Lu Zhan, the master of the Jidao Martial Arts Hall and the strongest man in Qingshan City. Lu Zhan looked at me, his gaze heavy. Your first kill? Yeah, I said, nodding simply. If this had been yesterday, I would have been nervous or tried to impress a man of his stature. But after a fight to the death, My mind had changed. I felt a profound sense of peace. Not bad, Lu Zhan said. That was it. Lu Minghua looked at me in surprise. She knew her father was incredibly harsh. Even when she got scouted by Galaxy University, he only told her she was average. A few minutes later, the silence was replaced by the wailing of sirens. Police cars and ambulances flooded the street. Later, at the Qingshan First People's Hospital, the smell of disinfectant filled the air. I was in a VIP suite, and the hallway was already overflowing with flowers. Representatives from every major organization in the city were lined up to see me. Cameras flashed constantly. I put on my best polite smile and thanked everyone. I didn't care about the fame, but I definitely cared about the rewards. The first high school gave me 2 bottles of longevity nutrient solution. The mayor's office handed over 100,000 yuan in cash. The Education Bureau gave me another bottle of nutrients, and a Brave Youth Foundation added another 150,000 yuan. After an hour of photos and handshakes, the room finally cleared out, leaving only my friend Guoranyu to help look after me. Man, earning money is exhausting. I sighed, rubbing my face. My smile was literally stuck. But if this is the payout, I wouldn't mind doing it again. I tried to shift in bed, but a sharp, stinging pain shot through my side. I hissed, clenching my teeth. Now that the adrenaline was gone, the reality of my injuries was setting in. My diamond body technique was good, but it hadn't been enough to fully block Zhao Weiping's desperate origin power. Guoranyu looked at me with guilt in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Lin Yuan. I should have gotten back sooner. The police districts are all managed separately, and I couldn't get the word through fast enough. I waved him off with a grin. Don't worry about it. I gained a lot from this. And I meant it. My Gale Steps and Thunderbolt Slash were both at the perfect level now. If I had practiced normally, that would have taken years. Plus, my mental state had hardened. I felt like a real warrior. Guoranyu thought I was talking about the money. Well, that 1 million yuan bounty shouldn't be a problem, he said. You definitely earned it. But there was still the matter of the Shanghai Genius Training Camp slot. Zhou Wei's face turned a shade of blue as he looked at me. My brows twitched. I could tell he was holding something back. If you have something to say, just say it, I said with a light laugh. My mental state is strong. I can handle it. I had beheaded Zhao Weiping in front of millions of citizens in Qingshan City. The police department wouldn't dare cheat me out of my reward openly. Zhou Wei leaned in and whispered. Some of the officers reviewed the surveillance footage from the meat shop. They're claiming that the only reason you killed Zhao Weiping was because Lu Minghua had already critically injured him. They think she played the key role. He paused, looking indignant. Because of that, they're saying you should take the 1 million yuan bounty, but the Shanghai Genius Training Camp slot should go to Lu Minghua instead. I listened quietly. Zhou Wei let out a frustrated sigh. Anyone with eyes knows your contribution was greater. But you might not know that the Lu family has massive influence in Qingshan. They can sway the police department. I frowned. The Lu family is stepping in? If they're really doing this, it feels a bit like biting the hand that fed them. Not exactly, Zhou Wei clarified. From what I've heard, it's just the police officers trying to suck up to the Lu family. They're doing it on their own initiative. If that's the case, let Lu Minghua have the slot. I don't mind, I said, shrugging. I wasn't lying. I didn't value the Shanghai camp as much as others did. For most people, the 2 hardest parts of martial arts were raising their cultivation level and mastering techniques. Neither of those was an issue for me. What I needed most were raw resources and new manuals. Based on Lu Minghua's personality, if she took the slot, she'd definitely compensate me with something of equal value anyway. So, in your eyes, I'm just someone who likes taking advantage of people? A cold, slightly annoyed voice drifted in from the doorway. Lu Minghua was sitting in a wheelchair, glaring at me. Her father, Lu Zhan, was pushing her into the room. I smiled at her. I'm serious. The Shanghai camp doesn't do much for me. But of course, if you feel bad about it, feel free to drown me in money. Keep it for yourself, Lu Minghua said, rolling her eyes. My focus right now is breaking through to become an official martial artist. Helping the police was just about finding a breakthrough opportunity. I never planned on going to that camp. What a shame, I said, shaking my head with mock regret. I was hoping to squeeze a fortune out of you. Seeing our conversation wrap up, Zhou stood and bowed slightly. Hello, Night Lu. Lu Zhan was a man of few words. He simply nodded. Then, he turned his gaze toward me. Manhwa told me. You saved her life. I owe you a favor. I'm her classmate, I replied easily. Saving her was the right thing to do. Lu Zhan didn't waste time on small talk. He reached out for my phone, and I handed it over. He typed in a string of numbers. Call me when you need something. He didn't specify what kind of need, but Zhou Wei's expression changed instantly. He looked at me with pure envy. In Qingshan City, there was almost nothing Lu Zhan couldn't get done if he set his mind to it. This wasn't just a phone number. It was a blank check for a miracle. I realized he wasn't just being polite. My soul had evolved, making me stronger, but I wasn't so detached from the world that I'd turned down a powerful backer. Uncle Lu, I won't be formal then, I said, taking my phone back with a smile. I wasn't trying to suck up to him. I noticed he had saved his contact name as Uncle Lu. He was signaling that he viewed me as a junior, not just a stranger. Lu Mingyue rolled her eyes at me again. Uncle Lu, you really know how to climb the ladder, don't you? Why don't you just call him Godfather? Since the rescue, her attitude toward me had become noticeably more intimate, though she probably hadn't realized it herself. Is that an option, Uncle Lu? I joked. We chatted for a bit longer before the Lu family left. Once I was alone, I lay back and started tallying my gains for the day. 9 bottles of longevity nutrient solution. Over 1 million yuan in cash and checks. Another million still pending from the police. My bank account balance was already at 60,000. I did the math and nearly jumped. It was close to 5 million yuan. If I was careful, this was enough to fund me all the way to becoming a martial artist. Money wouldn't be a problem for a while. It's time to change my breathing method, I thought. Different grades of breathing methods had different tempering effects. If I had been practicing an S-rank method focused on endurance today, I wouldn't have had to risk everything to kill Zhao Weiping so quickly. I could have just danced around him with Gale steps until he collapsed. Unfortunately, S-rank methods weren't for sale. Private factions kept them locked away as the foundation for their heirs. The federal government had a few, but they required massive amounts of merit points. Killing Zhao Weiping gave me some, but it was a drop in the bucket compared to what an S-rank technique cost. A-rank methods were on the market, but they cost anywhere from several million to tens of millions for a single inheritance. I could afford the cheap ones, but blowing all my cash on one didn't seem smart. A B-rank method was the most practical choice for me right now. It would still be a massive upgrade over my current D-rank, vigorous bull technique. I pulled out my phone to browse B-rank options. Qingshan First High was a top-tier school, so their library went up to B-rank. Usually, students were limited to 4 techniques, and I had already hit my limit. But with my current strength and the merit of killing a major criminal, the school leaders would likely turn a blind eye and let me borrow another B-rank manual for free. Geniuses always get perks. Before sleeping, I summoned my status panel. Level, Awakening Stage 6, Vigorous Bull Strength. Micro level, 12%. Gale Steps, Perfect level, 7%. Thunderbolt Slash, Perfect level, 1%. Ancient Killing Art, Proficient, 23%. Diamond Body, Level 3, 27%. I stared at Gale Steps and Thunderbolt Slash. Perfect was supposed to be the limit. There were no sublevels. Once you hit it, you were done. Usually, the system stopped giving me insights at that point, but the progress bars were still moving. Was it a bug, or was there something beyond perfection? I thought about it for a long time, but couldn't find an answer. Eventually, I closed my eyes. It didn't matter. Once it hit 100%, I'd find out. I slept heavily that night, finally making up for days of exhaustion. I didn't wake up until 9 a.m. the next morning. I felt refreshed. To my surprise, the stinging pain in my side was almost gone. Zhou Wei told me the Lu family had brought in a professional healing type awakened from the capital overnight. The doctor checked me over and cleared me for discharge. I didn't hang around. I grabbed a cloth bag from a nurse, stuffed my nutrient solutions and cash inside, and said goodbye to Zhou Wei. The weather was beautiful. The sun was warm, and a light breeze brushed against my face. I stood by the roadside, debating whether to go home or head back to school. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me. I looked up. Wei Bohu was standing right in front of me. Still planning on the monthly exam arena? I asked, my voice calm. Whatever you arrange, I added with a grin. My injuries would be fully healed long before the exam. With both Gale Steps and Thunderbolt Slash at the perfect level, facing a level 9 Awakened wasn't even a challenge. Even if that opponent had mastered a B-rank technique to the proficient level, they wouldn't stand a chance. Wei Bohu wanted to manipulate the monthly exams. Fine. I was going to show him exactly what a real surprise looked like. Or more accurately, the joy would only last until he stepped onto the stage. After that, there would only be terror. You really think killing a half-dead spy makes you a professional warrior? Wei Bohu curled his lip, his tone dripping with sarcasm. He hadn't seen the live broadcast. He'd only read a few news reports that praised my blade skills to the heavens. He didn't believe a word of it. To him, journalists were just professional liars who loved to exaggerate. Whatever. I'm not here to argue with you, Wei Bohu said, shaking his head. I'm here for business. What kind of business? I asked casually. This isn't the place to talk. Wei Bohu pointed toward a black luxury car parked nearby. Let's talk in my car. I thought about it for a second and nodded. I was the center of attention right now. The government was watching, and the media was everywhere. Unless Wei Bohu was a complete idiot, he wouldn't try to ambush me in broad daylight. Still, I wasn't naive. As I followed him, I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen a few times to set a safety measure, and shoved it back into my pocket. The interior of the car was incredibly spacious. Unlike a normal car, the 2 rows of leather seats faced each other. Between them sat a folding table made of a rich, dark wood that looked expensive. A middle-aged man sat there. He wore high-end clothes and looked a lot like Wei Bohu, though his eyes were narrower and held a cold, calculating glint. The young hero who beheaded the spy in one strike, the man said, offering a warm, practiced smile. You certainly look the part. This is my father, Wei Bohu announced proudly. Wei Qiansa, the chairman of the Wei Corporation. I didn't blink. I sat down heavily, taking up as much space as I wanted. Don't waste my time. What do you want? Just say it. I had no interest in playing social games with people like them. Wei Bohu's brow furrowed, but he forced himself to stay patient. I want to buy your spot in the Shanghai talent training camp, he said. I froze for a second. You can buy and sell those spots? The Shanghai training camp wasn't some private school. It was run by the Donglin Administrative District government. It was a purely official institution. Normally, no, Wei Bohu said with a smug smile. But in Qingshan City, there is nothing the Wei Corporation can't do. I'll give you 1 million. All you have to do is sign a transfer agreement. I raised an eyebrow and let out a short, dry laugh. You talk up the Wei Corporation like it's some legendary empire, and this is your offer? 1 million. To the old me, 1 million was a fortune. But it wasn't enough to buy a spot in that camp. There were plenty of private cram schools for the college entrance exams, and the top-tier ones charged millions just for registration. Shanghai was more powerful than any of them. You couldn't even get in with just money. Wei Bohu snorted. You think 1 million is too little? You're an orphan. Have you ever even seen that much money? You wouldn't earn that in a lifetime. Thud. I tossed my cloth bag onto the table. The mouth of the bag fell open, revealing thick stacks of cash mixed with several bottles of expensive longevity nutrient solution. A few checks poked out from the pile, and not a single one had fewer than 6 figures written on it. I looked at Wei Bohu and blinked innocently. I'm sorry, what did you say? This bag is just so heavy, I can barely carry it. It's a real struggle. If he wanted to flex, he picked the wrong person. I was a grandmaster at being petty. Wei Bohu's face turned a brilliant shade of purple, his mouth snapping shut. Beside him, Wei Qiansa remained unbothered. He smiled thinly. It's a business negotiation. Disagreeing on price is normal. If Student Lin isn't happy with the offer, feel free to name your own. I thought about it for a moment. I decided to test the waters. 20 million. I knew I was asking for a lot, but that's how negotiations worked. You start high and settle in the middle. My bottom line was 10 million. If he could pay that, I'd sell. I wasn't worried about Wei Bohu getting stronger and coming after me later. The boost 10 million credits would give me would far outweigh whatever he could learn at that camp.